Chapter 1825. Anlin was shocked. The heavenly gods aren't even guarding the heavenly gates anymore? Are they playing guerrilla warfare? Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed. The heaven-crushing sect has spell techniques that can detect the location of the heavenly gods, right? Aren't the heavenly gods afraid of being hunted down by the heaven-crushing sect? A resigned expression appeared on Bai Ling's face. The heaven-crushing sect has detection spell techniques, but the heavenly gods also have anti-detection spell technique. If they work together, the heaven-crushing sect will indeed be able to detect them. However, as long as they work separately and use concealment spell techniques, the heaven-crushing sect really won't be able to detect them. They hide their auras and search for prey before revealing themselves. By the time the heaven-crushing sect arrives, the heavenly gods will have already finished their business and fled. They're all top-notch hunters that are extremely difficult to capture. There's nothing we can do about them. Anlin stroked his chin. This is the downside of Nuwa's mending of the heavens, hence, all of the mighty figures are on tenterhooks right now. Only by grouping up with Tao integration stage super mighty figures can they feel a sense of security, Bai Ling explained. Aren't the cultivators that aren't mighty figures panicking? Anlin asked. The heavenly gods will still suffer a backlash if they attack. The heavenly gods most likely feel like there's no need for them to suffer a backlash from the heavenly Tao just to kill them. Bai Ling sighed. No wonder some of the orders I made for them to transcend their tribulations were cancelled. Anlin came to a sudden realization. There were 4 major events that Bai Ling had mentioned. Each and every one of them was earth-shattering and had a profound impact on the Tai Chu continent. Aside from that, there were a few other minor events that she reported to Anlin. For example, Shao Tu had died again during his battle with the heavenly human tribe. For example, the 4-9 immortal sect's income this year had skyrocketed to 130 million spirit stones. For example, a heavenly liquid god had appeared in the West Sea and battled Lan Xiaoni. Anlin listened to Bai Ling's recount. Never would he have thought that so many things would have happened on the Tai Chu continent in less than a month's time on Earth. Where's Shao Tu right now? Anlin felt like he should pay his disciple a visit first. He's currently setting up a new resurrection formation in the sect. Bai Ling was a little speechless. What's wrong? Didn't we already set up one? Anlin asked with a puzzled look. Bai Ling massaged her brows. He said that the feng shui of the Spirit Patriarch Palace is quite good, so he wants to add a Divine Spirit Resurrection formation to the Spirit Patriarch Palace. Anlin, Spirit Patriarch Hall. Within a small secret realm that was extremely rich in soul power. The Spirit Maiden wore a red dress and wore a frosty expression. She had her hands on her hips as she glared at the man beside her with rage burning in her eyes. The man had a scholarly appearance and a pair of pitch-black dragon horns. He was humming a little tune, dripping a few drops of essence blood from time to time, putting in some materials from time to time, and carving some energy patterns from time to time. At this moment, a voice came from not far away. Shao Tu, are you still not done with the resurrection formation? The man turned around with an elated expression on his face. Disciple pays his respects to master. The resurrection formation has to be done very carefully and without any mistake. Otherwise, the formation will have no effect at all. Resurrection, resurrection, resurrection. All you know is resurrection. The Spirit Maiden's eyes widened. Can't you King die a few times less? Little sister Spirit Maiden, you have to know that no one wants to die. Shao Tu tried to persuade her. I just like to wander around a lot. However, this is a terminal illness that I can't change, so you have to understand me. The Spirit Maiden's eyebrows were twitching with rage. This is the first time I've seen someone die so recklessly. Anlin was a little curious. Disciple, how did you die this time? Sigh. A resigned expression appeared on Shao Tu's face, as if he was reminiscing about the past. After Nuwa mended the heavens, Didn't we launch an all-out attack against the heavenly human tribe? I fought on the Eastern Front, and the heavenly human tribe was forced into complete defeat, thereby securing a glorious victory. However, the heavenly gods intervened in the end, and we were unable to advance any further. Unlin nodded. He was well aware of just how powerful the heavenly gods were. Xiao Tu clenched his fists. But I was unwilling to give up. I had worked so hard to get here, so how could I give up halfway? So, when the two sides confronted each other, I secretly went around them and went straight to the Eastern Heavenly Gate. I was going to secretly destroy their home. Gasp! Unlin's flesh crawled as he looked at Xiao Tuesday. You're going alone? Yes, a dragon, Xiao Tu replied. Unlin's face convulsed slightly. Calling him a wanderer was an overestimation. What kind of place was the Eastern Heavenly Gate? It was the most terrifying place in this world, with countless heaven-awakened stage cultivators and heavenly gods. There were even paramount heavenly gods residing there. You're just AF** King Dao integration stage true dragon, and you want to destroy their northern heavenly gate? Upon hearing this, Unlin was struck by the urge to report his own disciple to his death. Master, you also think I'm being very irrational, right? Xiao Tu asked. Unlin couldn't be bothered to reply and rolled his eyes at Xiao Tu. Xiao Tu spoke in a slow voice. Master, you don't actually understand the strange emotions and obsessions that come with fighting for over 100 years. Our Kingdom of the Nine States Eastern Front United Army has fought against the heavenly human tribe for over 100 years, and countless people have perished. The accumulated blood has stained the entire Eastern Front United Army red, and countless bones have been buried under the yellow sand. We've worked very hard, and even though we've fought with our lives on the line, we're still being pushed back. Our territory has fallen, and the Kingdom of the Nine States has fallen. It's as if despair is descending upon us, and we're finding it difficult to breathe. Now we've finally secured a massive victory and crushed the heavenly human tribe united army. The morale of the entire army has been completely shattered, and the flames of rage that have accumulated over billions of souls have been completely unleashed, capable of incinerating everything. Xiao Tu's face was flushed with excitement. I've also been influenced by this boundless battle intent, and I want to do more. We've fought for over 100 years, but we still haven't seen the Eastern Heavenly Gate. Hence, I'm going to attack the Eastern Heavenly Gate on behalf of all the soldiers on the Eastern Front. Even if we can't destroy the Eastern Heavenly Gate, we're going to unleash the flames of war on the Eastern Front United Army. We're going to let our enemies know that we have the power to attack their base. Unlin nodded with an earnest expression. That's enough, I understand. Tears welled up in Xiao Tu's eyes. I'm following Master's example. Unlin, you've said a lot, but in summary, you're going to die because you're fighting, right? Xiao Tu. The Spirit Maiden gave him a thumbs up. What a brilliant summary. Xiao Tu clasped a hand over his chest with a sorrowful expression. Master, please be more gentle with your words. So, did you destroy the Eastern Heavenly Gate in the end? Unlin asked. An awkward expression appeared on Xiao Tu's face. I was almost there. How close is that? Unlin asked. Xiao Tu. I can already see the Eastern Heavenly Gate. It's less than 5,000 kilometers away from me. Unlin. You call that F*** almost? Xiao Tu hurriedly added, however, it's not like I came back empty-handed. Chapter 1826. Unlin didn't have much hope left. What did you learn? Xiao Tu replied with a serious expression. This is information that I obtained at the cost of one of my lives. The Northern Heavenly Gate is located at the end of the East Sea. It's a place with no sense of direction. Furthermore, white mist permeates the entire place, which has extremely powerful hallucinogenic properties. If it weren't for the fact that my dragon eyes are able to see through the mist, I probably wouldn't even have been able to see the Northern Heavenly Gate. Unlin had already guessed the outcome. And then you attacked me along the way? Xiao Tu nodded. They were extremely fearful of me, so they sent a total of 3 heavenly gods to kill me. Coupled with the 3 heavenly gods on the eastern front, there were at least 6 heavenly gods at the eastern heavenly gate. Unlin replied with an "Oh." And then? After that, I was able to glean the abilities of those 3 heavenly gods. Perhaps this will be very helpful to us in future battles, Xiao Tu replied. Unlin's heart tightened upon hearing this. Indeed, the powers wielded by heavenly gods were far too unfathomable. If they could glean the abilities of their enemies in advance, they would at least be able to make some preparations in advance. Xiao Tu spoke in a grim voice. One of the heavenly gods wielded a massive golden saber with divine symbols. His saber techniques were truly superb, and the saber projection was extremely sharp, allowing him to slice through my true dragon armor with ease. My true dragon body was chopped into hundreds of pieces by his saber. The other heavenly god was a male heavenly god with a crimson divine halo. He wielded the most powerful flames in this world, and he was able to cook all of my flesh with just a single slap. The last heavenly god was even stranger. It was shrouded in black mist, and with a light touch of my body, my flesh and blood rapidly decayed and decayed. I even fell to an even lower life form. My bloodline degenerated, and I turned from a dragon to a snake. After that, just as my consciousness was about to collapse, a pure white light suddenly flashed in the distance. That light was imbued with boundless hope, and I knew that if I were to be assimilated by that light, I probably wouldn't even be able to revive, so I chose to self-detonate in the final instant. Unlin's heart throbbed with pain after hearing Xiao Tu's battle experience. Xiao Tu, this isn't battle experience. This is clearly torture. Xiao Tu stood up straight with a confident expression. The process isn't important. What's important is the result. The result is that you're dead. The spirit maiden crossed her arms over her chest. Xiao Tu tried to defend himself. No, the result is that I learned about the abilities of the 3 heavenly gods, and I've even been resurrected. My actions this time were worth it. A gratified expression appeared on Unlin's face. It's indeed quite valuable. Thank you for your hard work, but don't be so impulsive next time. You might have encountered the heavenly light goddess in the end. If you self-destructed 1 second later, I might have had to build a grave for you. Xiao Tu was in a good mood after receiving Enlin's approval, and he continued to hum a little tune as he cleaned up the resurrection formation. The spirit maiden was still very angry. This was the spirit patriarch's burial site, and every inch of this land was sacred and inviolable. However, Xiao Tu had set up a spell formation here, and she was extremely displeased. However, she knew that the most important thing was for the living, so she didn't try to stop Xiao Tuesday. Instead, she could only stand off to the side and fumble with rage. And Lin's heart ached for her, so he prepared a few soul power-enhancing spirit fruits for the spirit maiden to eat in order to calm her down. After taking care of everything, he returned to the sect leader palace. There was a piece of information that Xiao Tu had mentioned that he was very concerned about: the heavenly fire god who possessed the power of fire. Enlin had a phenomenal success stage body of the war god mission, which was to push all of his 5 elemental cultivation methods to the 9th stage. He had already perfected his metal type and earth type cultivation methods, and he was only missing wood, water, and fire. He flipped through the information on his desk, which contained images of the 2 Dao integration stage super mighty figures and 23 return to void stage mighty figures that had perished in the past few days. The heavenly gods hunting down the powerful beings of the Tai Chu continent had created quite a stir recently. The victims are split into 3 groups. The first group has been reduced to mincemeat. The second group has bodies that have been twisted into all sorts of strange shapes, and the third group has nothing but scorch marks on the ground. Enlin had already made a decision as he looked through the information. Little Ling, summon the blood martial wanderer, Enlin instructed in an indifferent voice. Yes, master. A slender woman in a tight-fitting black Taoist robe bowed in response. Not long after, a humanoid living being wearing a conical bamboo hat and a black robe walked in. His body was as pristine white as jade, and there was a crimson cross on his face. He immediately extended a respectful salute upon seeing Enlin. The blood martial wanderer pays his respects to sect leader Enlin. No need for formalities. Enlin smiled. The blood martial wanderer was a powerful being at the return to void pinnacle stage of the holy martial clan, and he liked to travel around the Tai Chu continent. However, a series of tragic cases of powerful beings being hunted and killed recently had him panicking. Thus, he sought out the 4-9 Immortal sect for protection. After all, the heavenly gods would only target powerful beings scattered all over the Tai Chu continent, and they wouldn't go head-to-head with a super-powerful force. I summoned you here because I need you to do me a favor. Enlin stood up. Please tell me, sect leader Enlin, and I'll do my best to help. The blood martial wanderer wasn't someone who only knew how to ask for favors, so he was naturally willing to do whatever he could to help Enlin. Yi Ling stood off to the side, blinking her bright eyes. She was a little curious about her master's intentions. Then stand here and don't move. A series of blue, liquid tentacles suddenly appeared behind Enlin. They extended and thickened, and they glowed with a peculiar blue light as they slowly approached the blood martial wanderer. Come, let me know everything about you. Yi Ling was astonished. The blood martial wanderer hurtled back in retreat. No. Sect leader Enlin. What are you trying to do? He wanted to escape, but it was already too late. Enlin's tentacles quickly wrapped around his legs, then his thighs, then his waist, then his chest, then his arms, his neck, his face. No! The blood martial wanderer howled in agony. Yi Ling's bright eyes widened, and she clasped her hand over her mouth to prevent herself from letting loose a cry of surprise. 15 minutes later, the blood martial wanderer stumbled out of the sect leader's palace. He looked up at the sun in the sky and heaved a forlorn sigh. Yi Ling stood behind him with a hint of sympathy in her eyes. Ling, look at your master's appearance. How do I compare to him? A calm and magnetic voice came from behind her. Yi Ling turned around to discover a humanoid being wearing a conical bamboo hat and a black robe. His entire body was as pristine white as jade, and there was a crimson cross on his face. He was currently looking at her with a smile. Yi Ling's dimples appeared on her face as she smiled. Master is so powerful. Not only is his appearance similar to the blood martial wanderers, but even his aura is identical to the blood martial wanderers. Enlin nodded with satisfaction. Tell Master's wife that I'm going out for a while. What are you going to do? Yi Ling asked. Enlin replied, I'm going to kill heavenly gods. Chapter 1827. Yi Ling's expression shifted slightly. Master, you've only just returned. Aren't you going to rest? Enlin shook his head. Opportunity waits for no man. The heaven-crushing sect is no pushover, and they'll probably find a way to break the heavenly gods' aura concealment very soon. Hence, it's very likely that the heavenly gods will leave after killing them. Then you have to be careful, Master, Yi Ling said with a serious expression. Enlin patted Yi Ling's head. Don't worry. You know how powerful your master is. The heavenly gods can transform into hunters and hunt down the powerful beings of the Tai Chu continent. Then I can also transform into a hunter and hunt down the heavenly gods. Yi Ling nodded obediently with reverence and trust in her eyes. All right. Master is the best. I'll be waiting for your good news at the sect. Enlin nodded before departing from the 4-9 Immortal sect. No one in the outside world knew about the blood martial wanderer's arrival at the 4-9 Immortal sect. Enlin only had to disguise himself as the blood martial wanderer and travel according to his original plan. I'll pass through the kingdom of the 9 states and pass through the southern region of the Purple Star ruins. After that, I'll head toward the territory of the herd beast tribe. The Dongyang Plains is a boundless rainbow grassland. There are many renowned spirit lands, spirit lakes, and spirit mountains there. The peace-loving herd beast tribe lives there. Unlin nodded. There were no Tao integration stage super mighty figures in this tribe, and the most powerful living beings there were only at the return to void pinnacle stage. Due to the fact that they didn't participate in the war between the heavenly human tribe and the kingdom of the Nine States United Army, the heavenly gods didn't hunt them down. Unlin imitated the blood martial wanderer's method of movement, and he was able to travel several dozen kilometers with each and every step he took. Due to the war, many places had become barren and desolate. The blood martial wanderer enjoyed the scenery with every step he took, so Unlin had to pretend to enjoy the scenery as he walked toward the Dongyang Plains. Before he knew it, he had already made it out of the Kingdom of the Nine States. The eastern region of the Kingdom of the Nine States had already become the epicenter of the war. The Winter Goat Plain in the north was peaceful and serene. Unlin was dressed in a black robe as he strolled through the barren land. He raised his head and looked towards the north. He could still see the distant horizon. There seemed to be a white pillar of light that pierced through the sky, as if it was supporting the entire world. Goddess Nviwa's mending of the heavens was really a big commotion. After walking for a whole day, the next day Unlin arrived at the Winter Sheep Plains. The first thing he saw was not the boundless grassland, but the undulating and curved grassland. Some of the grasslands were green, some were beige, and some were even light blue. "Oh, what a beautiful scene!" Unlin exclaimed in amazement. He pulled out a photographic crystal and took a few selfies. This was also a habit of the blood martial wanderer, and he imitated it flawlessly. As he stepped onto the soft grass and inhaled the fragrant scent of the grass, he suddenly felt like he had returned to the territory of the 4-9 immortal sect. Oh, what wonderful air! Unlin squinted his golden eyes, and the bloody cross on his face wrinkled slightly as he praised from the bottom of his heart. After walking for a short while, an angry shout suddenly came from afar. "Stand still! Don't run!" A dragon-headed monster with a horse's body let out a delicate shout. She stomped her feet on the ground and chased after a leopard whose feet were spewing red-hot air at an extremely fast speed. "If you keep running, I'll kill you, you bastard!" "Oh, beautiful lady, do you need help?" The blood martial wanderer was a very warm-hearted and righteous person. Unlin immediately rushed over upon seeing the situation unfolding up ahead. Whoosh! Unlin rushed over to the fleeing treasure and lashed out with a leg. Bam! The leopard's body was bent over by the kick. The resulting shockwaves transformed into gale-force winds. The leopard let loose a blood-curdling wail as its body was sliced in half. The two halves of its body spasmed a few times before dying. "This lady already said that she'll kill you if you keep running, yet you're still running. You're asking for it." Unlin turned around with a smug expression to discover the dragon-headed horse monster, who had fallen into a daze. The dragon-headed horse monster's voice trembled. You, Unlin immediately extended a slight bow. "Beautiful lady, there's no need to thank me. Please call me the warm-hearted wanderer." The dragon-headed horse monster pounced toward the leopard's carcass as tears flowed from its eyes. "But what I said just then was just to scare my leopard. Why did you kill it?" Unlin's expression faltered upon hearing this. This was King awkward. "Beautiful lady, how could you say something like that in front of so many people?" Unlin felt like this wasn't his fault. The dragon-headed horse monster's face was filled with resentment. This is the equivalent of a mother chasing after her brat, saying that she'll kill him if he keeps running. Then, a warm-hearted passerby came over and saw that the brat was still running, so he immediately decided to kill the brat. "Whose fault do you think this is?" Unlin replied with a solemn expression, "It's the mother's fault." The dragon-headed horse monster. If it weren't for the fact that it knew that it was no match for Unlin, it would have pounced on Unlin a long time ago and bit him. "So be it, this is only one of the several thousand fire leopards I've raised. It's dead, so be it." The dragon-headed horse monster heaved a resigned sigh as it stowed the carcass of the leopard into its storage ring. Lin had long since known that this monster was no ordinary creature. This monster's skeletal age was only around 20 years old, but it was already of the spirit-nurturing stage. This would make it a top-tier prodigy no matter where it was placed on the continent, so its identity was definitely not to be underestimated. Even though he was mentally prepared, he was still astonished upon hearing that this monster had several thousand fire leopards. These leopards have flames beneath their feet. Aren't you afraid of a fire? Lin was astonished. Whoever starts a fire will become a delicacy on the dining table tomorrow. They wouldn't dare to do that. The dragon-headed horse monster harumphed coldly and said, "Don't underestimate our herd beast tribe's ability to tame mutant beasts." Lin nodded with a hint of reverence in his eyes. "Beautiful lady, would you be able to allow me to tour your tribe?" The blood martial wanderer was fond of interacting with others and experiencing all kinds of cultures. The dragon-headed horse monster wore a cautious expression. "Why would you want to tour our tribe?" Lin pointed at the bloodstains on the ground. "See, I've helped you, so why don't you help me as well? I just want to learn about the cultures of different tribes." The veins on the monster's forehead bulged. "You call this helping me? You killed my leopard and you call this helping me?" "Oh right, let me introduce myself. I am the blood martial wanderer," Lin said. "Ah. You're the blood martial wanderer of the holy martial clan?" The monster shuddered, and it stared at Lin in astonishment. It was as if it had just woken up from a dream when it saw the large red cross on his face, and it instantly became much more respectful. It lowered its head and said, "Welcome, Senior. Please don't take offense to my previous rudeness." The blood martial wanderer was actually quite renowned on the continent, and he was a very good person. Thus, everyone had heard of his name and were quite respectful toward him. "You're welcome." Lin smiled warmly and politely. The dragon-headed horse monster blushed, and she wiggled her sexy bottom at Lin. "Then, Senior, please ride me." Lin was dumbstruck. The dragon-headed horse monster blinked. "Come on, I'll take you to the herd beast tribe." Lin heaved a sigh of relief. Oh. Chapter 1828. My name is Ma Ying, which means the Lady of Light. I'm the daughter of the chieftain of the Immortal Grass tribe, one of the 10 great tribes of the herd beast tribe. The tribe I'm bringing you to is the Immortal Grass tribe. So it's the Lady of Light. I've heard a lot about you. Lin rode on Ma Ying and galloped on the grassland. At this moment, he pretended to be enlightened and said politely, "Senior Blood Martial Wanderer, there's actually no need for you to address me like that." Ma Ying's buttocks swayed as she galloped across the grassland with Lin on her back. She said in a soft voice, "My father, Xian Bo, actually has over 100 children. Things like Daughter of the Earth, Daughter of the Sea, Son of Light, Son of Hope, and so on and so forth. These aren't any honorifics. You can just call me Little Ma." This was to Lin's liking, and Little Ma immediately called out. Not long after, a large expanse of magnificent tents appeared in his field of vision. No, they are not so much tents as fine fabric constructions. The tents on the plains weren't just single-story structures. There were also 2-story, 3-story structures, and even tower-like structures. However, these tents were indeed made of light cloth that could be removed and taken away at any time. This was also to make it easier for the herd beast tribe to move their tribe whenever they wanted. Thousands of fire leopards were gnawing on the grass in a small mountain in the west of the grassland. The fire leopards weren't the only ones reared here. Further north, the herd beast clan also reared a type of sturdy thunder rhinoceros, a black hawk covered in steel feathers, tens of thousands of flying poisonous beast ants, and wooden dummy beasts that were as docile as wooden poles. Lin did a rough survey and discovered that there were 68 different types of beasts within a radius of several thousand miles. There were more than 20 million of them, and they were managed by over 3 million members of the herd beast clan. The herd beasts all looked like Maing. They had the bodies of horses and the heads of dragons. Although they had the head of a dragon, they had nothing to do with the dragon clan. They were two completely different races. Ing, why did you bring a man here? You're even letting him ride you? An unfriendly voice sounded. Patter, patter, patter. A male herd beast, who was a size larger than Ma Ying and had a tall beard on his face, looked at Lin, who was on Ma Ying's body, with a warning expression. Monde, are you crazy? Are you jealous of the holy martial clan? Ma Ying clearly didn't have a good impression of this male herd beast, and she shouted, This is the renowned blood martial wanderer of the holy martial clan. Open your eyes and don't offend him. Mander was shocked when he heard this and immediately apologized. Lin remained calm and collected throughout this entire process, as if he couldn't be bothered to deal with ants like these. He didn't intentionally conceal his whereabouts. Soon, most of the herd beasts in the tribe learned that the blood martial wanderer had traveled to their immortal grass tribe. This matter alarmed the chieftain of the immortal grass tribe. Xian Bo held a grand welcoming banquet for Lin. Lin also followed the habits of the blood martial wanderer and immersed himself in the local customs. To put it simply, he asked about their daily lives, asked about their historical developments, and chatted about the interesting happenings in the tribe. Then, he feasted on meat, drank wine, and enjoyed the dance of beautiful women. Lin stood within the largest golden tent, and he looked at the several dozen female cultivators in front of him who were stroking their hair seductively. He really couldn't appreciate such beauty, but he couldn't show it. Instead, he had to pretend to be extremely intoxicated. This was because the blood martial wanderer was a non-racist, and he could appreciate the beauty of all races. At this moment, a female dancer with a voluptuous coquettish bottom swayed her body and walked over to Lin's side. Lin chuckled and patted the dancer on the back. Annoying, the dancer humphed, and her face flushed red. Ha ha! Fellow cultivator Shuewu, you're indeed, as the rumors say. You're an arrogant person who can appreciate the beauty of the entire race. A sturdy herd beast tribe member with snow-white skin laughed heartily at the front of the banquet table. He was Ma Ying's father, the chieftain of the immortal grass tribe, one of the 10 major tribes of the Dongyang Plains. His cultivation base was also very high, and he was at the return to void pinnacle stage. Xian Bo is too kind. There is beauty everywhere in life, and every race is unique. As long as you can wholeheartedly accept them, you will naturally be able to appreciate their beauty. Lin imitated the blood martial wanderer's manner and continued to speak with confidence and assurance. The banquet was still ongoing. The female dancer who had her bottom slapped had clearly said that she was annoying, but she still wiggled around in front of Lin. She even winked at him from time to time, as if she was trying to seduce him. Lin actually had his own bottom line. He rejected all contact with the body. Right now, Lin was already regretting his decision. Impersonating the blood martial wanderer was a little too difficult. It was like putting a sow in front of you and you had to pretend to be intoxicated and aroused. In fact, you even had to act as if you were about to f***ck the sow. This wasn't an exaggeration. The blood martial wanderer had already f***k'd several hundred different races. Aside from the True Demon tribe and the Light Wing clan, there were even more races that didn't look like humans. There were dark fire birds, mountain coiling bulls, western lizard dragons, black feathered pythons, 9 bamboo worms, mystic fire ghosts. He even claimed that he was working hard to strengthen the races in this world. That was what he said, and that was what he did. According to incomplete statistics, he really did create more than a dozen new races. It was no wonder that these female dancers with dragon heads and horse bodies would constantly try to seduce him. There was even a hint of anticipation in their eyes. It was as if they were inviting him to f***ck me, f***ck me, and Lin still had to pretend to be appreciative. It had to be said that this was a great test of his acting skills. Not long after, Ma Ying also appeared at the banquet. She walked over with a bashful expression on her face. She even used her sexy dragon whiskers to wrap around a cup of pure white liquid. Senior Blood Martial Wanderer, this is the milk that my daughter specially made for you. Please accept it, Ma Ying said in a sweet voice. Her dragon whiskers wrapped around a cup of milk and placed it in front of Anlin. This is... Anlin sensed something related to Ma Ying from this cup of milk. Ma Ying lowered her head shyly and said, "This is my milk. It's very delicious." Ha ha. I've tasted little sister Ma Ying's milk before. It's smooth and sweet. It's especially delicious. One of the higher-ups of the Immortal Grass tribe laughed heartily. It's indeed very good. Furthermore, it has a rich aftertaste. Another member of the Herd Beast tribe nodded in agreement. Fellow Taoist Blood Martial Wanderer, you're very lucky. I could only drink a small cup at that time. I haven't tasted a second cup until now. However, you actually have a large cup now. It looks like Ma Ying has worked very hard. Ha ha. The Herd Beast tribe members roared with laughter again. Ma Ying's face turned red from embarrassment. She looked at Anlin with a hint of nervousness and anticipation. Anlin was completely dumbfounded. When he saw the expressions on everyone's faces, he knew that he had to drink this milk. If he didn't drink such a precious thing, would he be looking down on them? Ma Ying wouldn't be able to back down either. However, Anlin stared at the rich milky fragrant liquid in front of him. He fell into a dilemma. Chapter 1829. Anlin had never regretted impersonating the Blood Martial Wanderer as much as he did at that moment. A simple cup of milk had put him in a predicament. He looked at the milky white milk rippling in the cup, which had a faint and alluring aroma. The taste should be pretty good, right? However, he just couldn't get over the hurdle in his heart. Although drinking cow milk or horse milk was very normal, this dragon horse milk came from a highly intelligent life form, and the owner of the milk was still looking at him sweetly. The hidden meaning behind this milk was actually a little different. Anlin was hesitant. Was the persona that he had worked so hard to maintain going to collapse here? Seeing Anlin's hesitation, Xian Bo asked curiously, "Fellow Blood Martial Wanderer, what's wrong? You don't look too good. Is it because of this milk?" Senior Blood Martial Wanderer doesn't like it? Ma Ying also looked at Anlin. Her 4 feet tapped on the ground uneasily, as if she was a little girl who had done something wrong. Anlin's heart lit up, and he said, "To tell you the truth, I made a promise with Princess Bai Ting of the Mountaintop Spirit Cow Tribe. In this life, I will only drink her milk. I am an honest and trustworthy person, so I really have no choice. Thank you for your kindness, little sister Ma Ying." Hearing this, all the herd beasts were shocked. Heavens! I heard that the Blood Martial Wanderer once went to the Mountaintop Spirit Cow Tribe's territory. Who would have thought that he would be together with Princess Bai Ting and even have such a promise? Fellow Blood Martial Wanderer is indeed impressive. Everyone spoke with admiration and envy. Only Ma Ying's eyes flashed with sadness. The milk of the Mountaintop Spirit Cow Tribe's cows was famous in the beast realm. Princess Bai Ting was pampered and beautiful, so her milk was even more alluring. Who would have thought that the Blood Martial Wanderer would have such a romantic past? He even managed to get Princess Bai Ting. Although everyone was shocked, they didn't feel that this was out of place. It was as if this was how it should be. Anlin smiled but didn't say anything. The Blood Martial Wanderer had indeed gone to the Mountaintop Spirit Cow Tribe's territory and met Princess Bai Ting. However, that ridiculous promise was obviously something he made up. In any case, none of the other living beings present would be able to verify his identity in a short period of time, so he was only going to use this identity for a brief moment. He would let fellow Taoist Xue Wu deal with the rest himself. If the real fellow Taoist Xue Wu were here and encountered such fragrant milk, he would most likely treat it as if it didn't exist and drink it first. Perhaps he would even ask for a refill. and Lin sighed with emotion. Everyone had their own way of living. This blood martial wanderer had really lived his life in a different way. For a moment, Lin was actually a little envious of its way of life. Ma Ying was a bit disappointed as she took her milk away. The blood martial wanderer had made an agreement with Princess Bai Ting, so she naturally couldn't say anything. Lin relied on his own resourcefulness and successfully dodged the attack. He continued to drink and have fun with the herd beasts. After some fun, the sun had already set on the grassland. Lin tactfully declined the invitation of a beautiful woman with the body of a horse and the head of a dragon. He walked alone to the glowing grassland in the eastern part of the Immortal Grass tribe and admired the night scenery of the Dongyang Plains. This grassland was very spiritual. During the day, it absorbed the energy of the sun. At night, it would emit a portion of its energy in the form of specks of green light. The green light had the effect of condensing spiritual energy and repelling mosquitoes. Goo-goo, goo-goo, achoo. Achoo. In the distance, there were over 1,000 red-hot whirlwind pigs sleeping and snoring in a shed. Their bellies glowed red, and every time they inhaled and exhaled, their bellies would flicker like red lanterns. From a distance, it was quite a beautiful sight. How beautiful! Lin sighed. He suddenly had a craving for pork. After hesitating for a moment, he gave up on that idea. Right now, he was only a dissolute blood martial wanderer, not a glutton. He spent the entire night admiring the beauty of the grassland. He saw the dazzling illusory light of the seven-colored grassland, the strange and mysterious animals of the grassland at night, and the beauty and tranquility of the grassland under a double moon. Oh, what a beautiful sight! Lin stretched out his arms and sighed in admiration at the beauty of nature. At this moment, I just want to recite a poem. Lin said in high spirits, Dongyang Plains beneath the purple star. The sky is like a dome, covering the surrounding wilderness. The sky is vast, the wilderness is boundless, and the wind blows the grass to reveal cattle and sheep. So wet, so wet. As expected, fellow Taoist blood marshal is so elegant and talented in poetry. Xian Bo had already arrived beside Lin, and there was a look of admiration on his face. Lin chuckled and didn't comment. He felt pretty good after plagiarizing someone's works. Fellow Taoist Xian Bo, aren't you going to rest? Lin asked. Xian Bo extended his hand and waved it lightly. The grass around him began to sway. Fellow Taoist blood marshal, are you going to continue onward? Xian Bo asked. Why are you asking this? Lin was a little confused. The news has definitely spread, and they should know as well. There's no need for you to continue onward. Just pretend that you're afraid of them, and then go back the way you came. They'll follow you, Xian Bo said calmly, and there was a deep look in his eyes. Lin's heart trembled. Xian Bo's words, Lin knew that his persona had collapsed. At the very least, Xian Bo had seen through him. Since when did his persona collapse? Was his acting that bad? Not only that, but Xian Bo had even guessed his goal, and Lin fell into a state of deep self-doubt. At the same time, he sighed inwardly. Xian Bo really wasn't simple. I was able to discover you because I've cultivated the art of beast herding to the highest level. I'm extremely sensitive to the minute expressions of living beings, their auras, and the characteristics of various living beings. That's why I discovered something amiss. Xian Bo smiled warmly. Don't worry, they've never seen you before, so they definitely won't be able to discover you. And Lin still didn't understand. Why? Xian Bo plucked a blade of grass and said with a smile, We hate war and are afraid of war, but this doesn't mean that we're absolutely neutral. If it's possible, I also want them to disappear from this world forever. They arbitrarily interfere with the life and death of living beings in this world, and this is a great act that will accelerate the decline of the world. And Lin nodded, bowed, and said, Thank you for the reminder, fellow Taoist Xian Bo, When the world returns to peace, let's drink and chat merrily again. Xianbo squinted his eyes and chuckled. The next day, the sun rose from the east. On the East Ram Plains, the roars of all kinds of birds and beasts could be heard. A new day had begun. And Lin solemnly bid farewell to Ma Ing, Xianbo, and the higher-ups of the immortal grass tribe, and stepped on his way back. He didn't continue eastward, and instead changed his route, heading towards the holy glacial lands. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. A day later, East Ram Plains. Xianbo was training his immortal beasts when, for some reason, a man suddenly appeared in front of him. It was a man wearing a tall, purple hat and clown makeup on his face. He slowly approached Xianbo, tossing 2 small red balls in his hands. The corners of his mouth cracked open, revealing an exaggerated smile. He asked, "Hello, do you want to play a game with me?" Chapter 1830. An indescribable fear welled up in Xianbo's heart as he looked at the clown before him. Every single cell in his blood was trembling, and his body was trembling uncontrollably. Who are you?" Xianbo asked with difficulty. "Who I am isn't important. Let's play a game. If you win, I'll let you go." The clown cracked a smile. Xianbo knew that he had no reason to refuse. He seemed to have figured out the clown's identity, and a bitter expression appeared on his face. "Why are you targeting me? I clearly didn't do anything wrong. It was a mistake to come into contact with the Holy Martial Clan. We won't give up on any potential threat. Alright, let's cut the crap. The game begins now." A large, colorful ball suddenly appeared beneath the clown's feet. He stood atop the large, colorful ball, and he moved back and forth in a rather comical manner. He chuckled as he tossed 5 red balls around in his hand. They were so fast that they left afterimages in their wake. The name of the game is Magic Circle of Love. The rules of the game are: I will step on the large, colorful ball and spin around you within a range of 3 meters. If you can catch me within 10 seconds, then you win, and I'll let you go. If you can't catch me, then you lose, and your entire body will be turned into fried dough twists. A hint of hope suddenly welled up in Xianbo's heart as he listened to the rules of the game. The clown was only 3 meters away from him, and he could instantly materialize over 10,000 arms to cover the entire space. How could he not catch the clown? The clown didn't prohibit the use of abilities, so he was acting within the rules of the game. He had a very good chance of winning. "Alright, let the game begin," the clown suddenly yelled. Xianbo wore a solemn expression, and he was just about to unleash his 10,000 immortal surgical technique to catch the clown. Bam! The large, colorful ball flew past him. A peculiar pressure instantly caused the grassland within a radius of 500 kilometers to cave in. How could this be? Xianbo's body was flattened by the large, colorful ball, and he lay in the center of the crater. His eyes were glazed over, and his flesh and bones were like rags as they leaked out of his skin and laid flat on the ground. La 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 la. The clown slowly spun around the flattened Xianbo on the large, colorful ball. 10, 9, 8, 7, 3, 2, 1 time's up. Unfortunately, you didn't catch me. You've lost this game. The clown grinned at Xianbo, who couldn't even move a finger on the ground. Xianbo, if you lose, you'll have to accept the punishment. Become a fried dough twist. As soon as the clown finished speaking, Xianbo's blood-curdling screams could be heard from the plains. Holy glacial lands. This was the place where the Snow Maidens had once lived and thrived. This place had been attacked by the terrifying cold power several times and had long since turned into a land of death. Apart from a few ice-type creatures, there were no other living creatures here. And Lin walked in the howling cold wind and heavy snow. Not long after, he arrived at a majestic yet dilapidated city. This is Spirit Frost City, one of the 4 major cities of the Snow Maidens? And Lin looked at the empty city with a thick layer of snow on the streets and houses and said emotionally, "Oh, what a sad scene, I just want to recite a poem now. Hello, let's play a game." A crisp voice suddenly sounded from behind Lin. And Lin turned around to discover a clown wearing a purple tall hat and colorful clothes standing behind him. It was tossing a few red balls around in its hands, and its mouth was wide open as an exaggerated smile appeared on its face. And Lin tightened his cloak, and the crimson cross on his face scrunched up into a ball. His pristine white body was a little stiff, and he asked with a nervous expression, "Who on earth are you?" "Who I am isn't important. What's important is that if you win, I'll let you go. If you lose, you'll have to accept the punishment." The clown tossed the red balls around. Large colored balls began to appear under the clown's feet, and he stepped on them and moved around in a comical manner. The name of the game is Magic of Love Spin. The rules of the game are as follows. I'll step on these large colored balls and spin around you within a radius of 3 meters. If you can catch me within 10 seconds, then you win, and I'll let you go. If you can't catch me, then you lose, and your entire body will turn into a fried dough twist. Sure enough, a hint of anticipation and hope appeared on Lin's face after hearing the rules. The clown smiled. Then, let the game begin. Bam! An earth-shattering explosion erupted. The ground within a radius of several hundred kilometers was suddenly melted by the terrifying flames. The clown's smile was still frozen on his face, but a bloody hole had already been punched into his chest. Air! The clown stared at the blood-martial wanderer with shock and confusion on his face. No, to put it more accurately, the blood-martial wanderer had already transformed into a human enveloped in holy flames. You! Just who are you? The clown didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before his body was pressed into the ground again, and a series of hammer-like fists rained down on him. Boom! Boom boom! Who told you to interrupt my poem recitation? Who told you to interrupt my poem recitation? F***ck your games. The colorful ball beneath the clown's feet exploded with a single punch. Then, the clown's hat was smashed into smithereens, revealing a purple divine halo that seemed to be constructed from countless tiny cubes. Immediately afterward, the fists smashed into the clown's extremely sturdy body. The heaven-crushing true intent imbued within the fists threatened to completely obliterate the clown's body. And Lin's first attack was like a bolt of lightning. He activated his fire sage mode with his 7 holy flames, and his aura soared to its peak. Furthermore, each and every one of his attacks was imbued with heaven-crushing true intent. It was as if countless miniature fists of the heavenly Tao were raining down on the clown's body. The clown was caught off guard by the sudden and violent attacks, and he was instantly severely wounded. He had always been the one to play games against others. He had never been beaten up before the game had even begun. You've broken the rules of the game. Accept your punishment. Life erase. The clown screeched as a purple light suddenly burst forth from his twisted and contorted body. And Lin felt an extremely powerful power imbued with the power of laws crash into his chest before spreading throughout his entire body, as if it were trying to annihilate him along with the power of the laws. So that's how it is. You've taken advantage of the backlash from me breaking the rules of the game and combined that with your power of the heavenly gods to create an even more powerful attack. And Lin sensed a hint of danger, and an earthy yellow divine halo suddenly appeared above his head. A mountainous defense enshrouded his entire body in order to defend against the clown's attack. The clown's body slithered like a loach, and it took this opportunity to escape from Lin's grasp. It flew into the air and fled into the distance with all its might. Lin! You're Lin! The clown yelled in shock and rage. It instantly understood that it had fallen into Lin's trap and had become a prey. Didn't you say you wanted to play games together? Don't run. A semi-transparent blue Lin suddenly appeared in front of the clown, and a sinister smile appeared on its face. Bam! The divine sense Lin condensed the power of the Xian Wu in one hand and punched the clown into the ground. Chapter 1831. The clown was completely dumbfounded. He had clearly shaken off Lin, but now, a spiritual body Lin had appeared before him. Furthermore, this spiritual body was ridiculously powerful. What was going on? Enlin would not answer his questions. Enlin's physical body and Enlin's spiritual body pounced toward the heavily wounded clown at the same time. Their terrifying auras pressured the clown so much that he could barely breathe. So powerful! How did Enlin become so powerful? The clown knew that his opponent possessed power comparable to that of a heavenly god. He also knew that his power had been reduced by 10% due to Nuwa's mending of the heavens. However, he still had a chance to escape. The purple divine halo on the clown's head glowed brightly when he saw Enlin pouncing toward him. He finally unleashed his most powerful technique as a heavenly god. Game domain. Boom. The surrounding heaven and earth instantly changed. Before Enlin's physical body and spiritual body could react, they discovered that the surrounding space had changed. It was as if the sky had been painted with all sorts of colors. On the ground, there were densely packed buildings filled with childlike charm. There were fairy tale castles, dreamy pagodas, and all sorts of intricate little houses. The ground was also filled with colors, and there were many adorable toys. Some teddy bears were even dozens of meters tall, leaning against the castles. There were also long trains running on the ground. Playing cards, dice, and all sorts of roulette could be seen everywhere. High up in the sky, there was also a needle that emitted a surging purple divine light. Its sharp tip was pointed toward the ground. A wondrous and light melody sounded. Background music also began to play. Welcome to my game domain. I am the heavenly game god. Enlin's physical body and spiritual body both faltered slightly. Then, they continued to pounce toward the heavenly game god on the ground. They did not care where they were. All they had to do was kill this clown. The clown shuddered at Enlin's actions. He had not even finished speaking his lines. Game pause. The clown yelled as he looked at the fist that was growing larger and larger. Buzz. Invisible ripples instantly engulfed the entire game domain. Space, time, particles, life, everything was frozen in place. In the game space, the clown was the only supreme ruler who had the right to play the game. If he wanted the game to stop, then everything had to stop. The clown crawled up from the ground and put on a confident and absurd smile again. Enlin, so what if you're strong? Now that you've entered my game world, you have to follow my rules. Suddenly, a die appeared in the clown's hand. He said with a chuckle, let's play dice. The die has 6 dots. I'll throw the die next. When the number is 1, you will become a fried dough twist. If you count 2, your body will be dislocated in 100 places. 3 points, and your whole body will rot. If you count to 4, you will be decapitated. If you count to 5, you can leave the game space. If I count to 6, I'll throw it again. The clown had given Enlin a chance of survival. In the game space, the fairer a game was, the more terrifying its power would be. Although the clown could not be absolutely fair, he would still give Enlin a chance of survival. This way, if he were to throw the first 4 dots, even someone as powerful as Enlin would be wiped out by the game space until he died. Then I'll throw it, the clown said with a smile as he held a large die in his hand. Then, he threw the die into the sky. The die flew into the sky. The clown had a look of anticipation. But all of a sudden, a large hand appeared out of nowhere and gripped the die tightly. Following a series of crackling sounds, the dice were crushed into powder. The clown looked at Enlin, who had crushed the die, with a dazed expression. What's going on? Didn't I already pause the game? Splat. An extremely sharp golden blade pierced through the clown's head. Vast and boundless soul power undulations continuously battered the surrounding heaven and earth. Pause the game. At some point in time, his spirit body Enlin had already appeared behind the clown. He gripped the golden sword in his hand tightly and chuckled. Weak. You're far too weak. How can a heavenly god like you set the rules of a game? Bam! Enlin tore through the void and instantly appeared before the clown. He stabbed a hand into the clown's chest and crushed his heart. No one can set the rules for me, Unlin. You don't have the right to make me play games with you. When Unlin was paused, the power of the heavenly gods within his body automatically activated and clashed with the power of the heavenly god of games. In the game space, the heavenly game god's power was slightly more powerful. But so what? One power of the heavenly god of games could not deal with the power of the heavenly god of games. Unlin had 3. He unleashed 4 powers of the heavenly god of games at the same time, and the power of the heavenly god of games was instantly shattered. You're using hacks. The clown glared at Unlin with resentment. You still have the nerve to criticize me? You're the heavenly game god. You've even abandoned the spirit of fairness in the game. What right do you have to criticize me? Unlin's expression was one of contempt and disdain. He did not know whether it was because he was too powerful or because the heavenly game god was too weak, but he felt that the heavenly god before him was much easier to bully than before. Bam! The clown's body suddenly exploded without any warning. Game player, revive. A system-like voice suddenly sounded from within the game space. The heavenly god clown's body suddenly materialized beside the purple needle. His body was unharmed, but a clear crack had appeared on his divine halo. It was as if there was a fatal flaw in his perfection. Unlin knew that this was a sign that the clown's body had reached its limit and was suffering a backlash from the heavenly Tao. You want fairness? Fine, I'll give you the fairness you want. The clown had a crazed expression on his face. He suddenly pulled out a huge poker card from the game space. The clown's image was printed on the front of the card, and a dense cluster of blue flowers was printed on the back of the card. The clown laughed sinisterly as he tossed the poker card into the sky. Absolute fairness means that the power of my heavenly game god will be unleashed to its fullest extent, or even beyond. You will die without a doubt if you fall for this trick. Die now. Game name, Death Poker. The rules of the game are to toss a poker card into the sky. After the card lands, if the face of the clown is facing up, then you, Unlin, will die. If the face of the clown is facing up, then I, the heavenly game god, will die. Unlin's expression darkened when he heard the rules. You're the one tossing the poker card. How do I know if you're cheating or not? Saying this, he was just about to rush over and hammer the heavenly game god. At this moment, the poker card spun in the sky and crashed into the ground. The blooming face of the blue flower was facing up. That's right, the face of the poker card was facing up. Unlin, the clown, whoosh! It was a supreme wave of energy. Accompanied by an extremely terrifying nomological energy, it instantly crashed into the clown's body. No! The clown wailed in anguish. His body was torn to shreds by the boundless nomological energy of the game's space. Unlin felt like he had been slapped in the face. The clown had used his actions to prove the fairness of the game. Chapter 1832. Unlin felt like he had encountered an idiotic opponent. He had seen enemies accidentally injure themselves, but this was the first time he had seen an enemy kill themselves through playing a game. Most importantly, this enemy was a high and mighty heavenly god. Game player, revive. The robotic voice sounded again. The purple needle hanging at the center of the game world glowed with a brilliant divine light. 3 times, Fire Sage Fist. World Creation, Soul Power Golden Sword. Unlin's fist erupted with scorching flames that could melt everything, while Unlin's consciousness materialized a top-notch divine sense holy sword that could slice through anything. Both of them attacked the purple needle at the same time. It was very likely that this needle was the core of the game world. Bam! Flames surged. Unlin's fist felt as if it had struck an indestructible barrier, and it hovered in mid-air 1 foot away from the needle before it was completely obstructed. Unlin's expression darkened. His fist was even more powerful than a mighty figure at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. Furthermore, His fist was imbued with extremely pure heaven-crushing true intent, and it could even destroy a heavenly god's hammer, but it couldn't break through this barrier? Ding! The soul power golden sword transformed into an extremely sharp golden streak of light, and it also stabbed into the invisible void outside of the pointer. Then, its momentum was obstructed. However, as it violently trembled, it was actually slowly advancing forward. At the same time, a sense of fear spread through the entire game world. Detected a player attempting to destroy the game. Now activating game elimination mechanism. An impatient voice sounded in the game world again. The train that was traveling on the ground instantly soared into the sky and crashed toward Enlin. The huge toy bear that was leaning against the castle roared and pounced toward Enlin. A pair of scissors sliced through space and slashed toward Enlin's neck. The golden trumpet also unleashed a demonic sound toward Enlin. One toy item after another began to move. Furthermore, all of them were imbued with paramount nomological powers, and the power they unleashed was something that even Enlin couldn't ignore. Piss off. 7 types of holy flames erupted around Enlin's physical body, transforming into destructive flames that swept out in all directions, incinerating everything that came charging at him. He gave the task of breaking the barrier to Enlin, while he himself was responsible for resisting the game dimension's obliterating power. Amidst the boundless sea of holy flames, there was a space that was pushed apart by the power. The clown's body reformed, but there were now 2 cracks on his head, and the cracks were densely packed around it, as if it could collapse at any time. Enlin, I want you dead! Death poker! The clown was obviously in a state of rage. A giant poker card appeared in his hand again. After quickly reading the rules of the game, he tossed it into the air. Absolute fairness in exchange for supreme power. This time, I'll definitely let you experience the power of the limit of a heavenly god. Die! Bang! The poker cards fell to the ground. The back of the blue flower faced upwards. The clown's smile froze on his face. Enlin, rumble within the game dimension, the terrifying nomological power that had been activated to the extreme once again crashed mercilessly into the heavenly game god's body, tearing it to shreds. Enlin really didn't know what to say about this heavenly god anymore. Continue breaking through the game dimension, Enlin's physical body said. The golden soul sword condensed by Enlin's divine sense shone with a dazzling light. It broke through the game dimension's defenses bit by bit, and it drew closer and closer to the purple needle. Game player, revive! An extremely mechanical voice sounded again. The clown's body reformed again. Crack, crack, another glaring crack appeared on the divine halo above his head. The clown panted heavily. Even though he had a wide smile on his face, he was unable to conceal the indignation and rage in his heart. Impossible! How is this possible? How can my luck be so bad? As he spoke, a giant poker card appeared in his hand again. I refuse to accept this. I just need to make it face up just once, and I'll definitely be able to kill you. The heavenly game god roared with indignation as he recited the rules of the game again. He knew that the current Enlin was simply too powerful. If he didn't use this method to its fullest potential, there was no way he could defeat Enlin. He had no way out. He could only fight to the death. The 2 Enlins looked at each other. Enlin's divine sense continued to stab at the core of the game dimension. Meanwhile, Enlin's physical body charged toward the clown. His flowing wind divine halo flashed above his head, and a barrier of wind that could isolate all powers enveloped his body. Vast amounts of nomological power bombarded his body, but it was unable to break through his defenses in a short period of time. Heavenly wind power, heavenly blade. Enlin drew his evil-slaying sword and imbued his heavenly power into the blade. He slashed out a sharp white line that could slice through everything. You can't stop me. The heavenly game god had already finished reciting the rules. He laughed maniacally as he tossed the death poker cards into the sky again. At the same time, tens of thousands of poker card shields materialized in front of him. Game immunity. Armor stack infinitely. A sharp collision erupted. The heavenly blade struck the tens of thousands of poker cards, but it was as if it had struck an extremely tough barrier. It sliced through layer by layer, but the speed at which it did so was far too slow. Following a deafening clang, the death poker cards had already fallen. The clown and Lin both glanced at the poker cards nervously. Immediately afterward, the clown almost fainted. It was face up again, and Lin couldn't help but laugh. "Brother, you're quite lucky." "Why?" The clown was about to have a mental breakdown, and Lin continued to mock him. "Why don't you change the rules? Otherwise, you could have killed me 3 times already." At this moment, the terrifying nomological power had already condensed and crashed toward the heavenly game god like a tsunami. Even Lin was a little shaken by this terrifying nomological power. He had to admit that he would still be in danger if he were to face this power head-on. The heavenly game god roared, "Game dimension, deactivate! Hurry up and deactivate! I'm not playing anymore!" A mechanical voice suddenly traveled over from within the game dimension. "If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. The loser cannot escape punishment. This is the law." Lin, the heavenly game god who wielded a heavenly god, was taught a lesson by his own heavenly god. Rumble. The clown's body was once again blasted into smithereens by the nomological power. "Sigh, what a lunatic!" Lin shook his head. At this moment, another voice traveled over from within the game dimension. "Game player, resurrect. Warning, the heavenly god has been severely damaged. Insufficient available energy. Resurrection failed. Lin, resurrect, restart. All energy, inject." At this moment, the purple needle began to decompose on its own. The game dimension began to crumble. Lin felt like he was in a trance. Then, he returned to his original world. Chilly winds howled and snow fell from the sky. The heavenly game god half knelt on the ground. His aura was extremely weak, and he panted heavily. The divine halo above his head was already riddled with countless cracks. It was clear that he was done for. Chapter 1833. How could Lin let go of such an opportunity to land the killing blow? Trash, eat my fist. Lin's physical body and divine sense fused together once again. The mountainous divine halo above his head released a vast divine light, causing his fist to become as majestic as Mount Bujo, crushing everything in its path. Game protection. The clown used his heavenly god power and quickly condensed a layer of light that enveloped his entire body. This was the game piece protection realm's power. It could allow the clown to travel through dimensions, escape from reality, and jump into another virtual world. However, the heavenly game god was at the end of his tether. How could he resist Lin's heavenly god power? If the heavenly game god had transmigrated into a computer game, then Lin's fist would be able to smash through a computer with a single punch. Then, he would also be able to smash his in-game character into smithereens. Bam! Golden light flashed. The light barrier was shattered by Lin's fist. The heavenly game god's chest also exploded from this punch, and his body was sent flying like a cannonball. White shockwaves swept through the air as he crashed into a few large snowy mountains, causing them to shatter. Only then did he vomit blood and tumble to the ground. Cough, 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 cough. If it weren't for my terrible luck, how could I have been? Whoosh! Spatial ripples appeared. Before he could finish speaking, Lin had already appeared before the heavenly game god again. His fist descended once more. This time, he aimed for the clown's head. With a loud boom, the clown's head was blasted into nothingness. The divine halo above the heavenly game god's head seemed to have reached some kind of limit. The cracks became denser and denser. Finally, it could no longer bear the burden and exploded into tens of thousands of purple cubes. Then, they transformed into particles of light and disappeared into the air. No, the heavenly game god's voice was weak and listless. After saying this, his body also transformed into particles of light. And Lin could faintly feel that something special had fused with heaven and earth, making heaven and earth more harmonious and complete. This was the first time he had felt this way. He had never felt this way when he killed heavenly god. Why would I feel this way after killing a heavenly god? Could it be that the consciousness of the heavenly Tao is also an incomplete manifestation of the heavenly Tao? And Lin was perplexed. He knew that the destruction of the ancient Tai Chu realm was due to the unconscious expansion of the heavenly Tao. It was exactly because of this that the paramount heavenly Tao of the Tai Chu continent was able to create a heavenly god of its own will. Could it be that the current heavenly Tao had changed its mind again? And Lin was puzzled, but he also knew that no one could answer his question at the moment. He looked at his own fist. Then, he looked at the vast expanse of white snow and the heavenly game god who had disappeared. He suddenly sighed with emotion. How weak! This was probably the easiest time he had ever faced a heavenly god. He had faced the heavenly gods in the past, and he had been on the brink of death every single time. What about the heavenly game god this time? He didn't even bleed. No, to be precise, he didn't even sweat. What kind of goddamn heavenly god was this? What a disgrace to heavenly gods. Am I too strong? Lin pondered for a moment. His cultivation base had broken through to the return to void intermediate stage. His divine sense had defied the natural order, and his divine Tao Jade had been perfected. Or perhaps the heavenly game god was weakened. Nuwa's mending of the heavens allowed the heavenly Tao to further suppress the heavenly gods. However, Lin thought about it for a long time before finally discovering the main reason behind this. The real reason why the heavenly game god was so weak was his intelligence. Or to put it mildly, it was his luck. She dragged Lin into the game space, then committed suicide 3 times in front of Lin. How could he not be afraid of that? Lin hadn't even unleashed his full power, yet the heavenly game god had already crippled himself. This was the main culprit behind all of this. It's been a long time since I've met such a stupid opponent. I'm so happy. Lin smiled smugly. He continued to disguise himself as the blood martial wanderer and roamed the holy glacial lands. No matter what, this operation to hunt down heavenly gods had still achieved a glorious victory. Eliminating a heavenly god was equivalent to eliminating a top-notch enemy of the human race. Even if they didn't reap any rewards in the future, they had still profited greatly. The only unfortunate thing was that the heavenly fire god wasn't the one who came looking for him. However, Lin was very open-minded. How could everything in this world go according to one's wishes? He would just let nature take its course. At this moment, near the eastern heavenly gate, boom! The mist in the surroundings suddenly surged and churned violently. A calm yet sorrowful voice rang out. It was an exceptionally majestic voice. The heavenly game god has been killed. The expressions of the 4 heavenly gods changed when they heard this. How is that possible? Didn't he go to ambush the powerful beings of the Tai Chu continent? He has always been very cautious and wouldn't pick a fight with a tough opponent. Who could kill him? Could it be the heaven-crushing sect? That's right. In this world, only the heavenly disciples of the heaven-crushing sect could make the heavenly game god unable to escape. At this moment, the ethereal yet grand voice traveled over again. No, Cyril and Chen Chen are both within our senses. They didn't make a move. In this world, apart from Nuwa, none of the other gods of creation have made a move. The heavenly light goddess words caused all the heavenly gods to fall silent. Although the ancient dragon empress was powerful, she shouldn't be able to make the heavenly game god unable to escape. Could it be that another existence who was even more powerful than the ancient dragon empress had appeared in this world? Could it be Lin? The skylark suddenly said in a crisp voice. The other heavenly gods didn't refute this. Evidently, they all agreed with this possibility. F***ck. Just how many heavenly gods has this B***starred killed? The male heavenly god with a massive golden saber on his back couldn't help but curse. The number of heavenly gods who have died directly or indirectly because of him has definitely exceeded 10, the heavenly god shrouded in shadows said in a low voice. Heavenly god destruction machine? If we're talking about the heavenly god's hatred toward humans, Unlin is definitely number one. If it really is Unlin, then this is a little scary. His rate of improvement is simply too fast. We must find an opportunity to kill him. His potential is too terrifying. The four heavenly gods were still discussing fervently, and their expressions became more and more solemn. The heavenly earth god has already made a preliminary guess regarding Unlin's identity. Let's not fight him head-on for now. Call the heavenly fire god and heavenly god Ling Hua back. The heavenly light goddess voice traveled over again. I'll do it. I have the heavenly heart net, the skylark said. It had the ability to connect with the heavenly gods' hearts in real time. After saying this, it began to chirp at the sky. However, not long after, the skylark's face paled. Oh no! I can't contact the heavenly fire god. Chapter 1834. All the heavenly gods were shocked. A bad premonition arose in their hearts. Impossible. Something just happened to the heavenly game god. Why can't we contact the heavenly fire god? Is he still alive? If he's alive, why isn't he replying? The male heavenly god with the huge saber on his back was getting anxious. The space around the heavenly fire god has been isolated by a power. I can't use the heavenly heart net to contact him, the lark said gravely. The heavenly fire god has most likely encountered an enemy. The enemy must be very powerful to be able to isolate the heavenly heart net. Furthermore, the heavenly fire god and the heavenly game god are active in different regions. They can't be the work of the same person, the heavenly god shrouded in shadows said gravely. Who is it? An invisible voice asked. At this moment, the heavenly light goddess's furious voice traveled over. Very well. Since you've made a move, don't blame me for being ruthless. You forced me to do this. The other heavenly gods' expressions changed when they heard the heavenly light goddess's words. The enemy who could make the heavenly light goddess so angry was definitely not simple. Heavenly light goddess, who is fighting the heavenly fire god? The lark asked curiously. It's Chun Chun, a faintly discernible voice sounded. I'm going out for a while. Suddenly, a beam of light streaked across the sky from the east and shot into the continent. Oh, is this the holy glacial Holy Land's first holy palace? Look, it's been ravaged by the power of frost. A man wearing a bamboo hat and a black robe exclaimed as he looked at the ball of light in front of him that contained the power of extreme frost. It really makes one sigh. In this situation, I only want to recite a poem. The day is as dark as dusk, and the northern wind is cold. Densine desires to brew snow, and the clouds are. Beep beep beep. The voice transmission talisman in the man's storage ring suddenly emitted an urgent light. Sigh, why is there always someone interrupting my recitation? The man had a helpless expression as he connected the voice transmission talisman. However, a voice that made his entire body tremble came from the other side. Unlin, where are you? Boss Chin Chin, why are you calling me? There's no time to explain. Hurry up and send me your location. I have a surprise for you. Unlin's heart skipped a beat. There was actually a surprise? Chen Chen's surprises usually wouldn't be too shabby, right? Unlin was a little excited and immediately sent his location to Chen Chen. 15 minutes later, a frail figure appeared in the snowstorm. Unlin, why did you come to a place like this? Chen Chen's calm and easygoing voice sounded. He walked in front of the man wearing the bamboo hat and saw the man's jade-white body and the big red cross on his face. He was stunned. What's going on? Unlin hurriedly returned to his original appearance and laughed out loud. Nothing much, I just want to disguise myself as someone else, then lure the Empyrean gods who have infiltrated the various powers over and kill them instead. A look of realization appeared on Chen Chen's face. Did it work? Unlin replied, I killed the heavenly game god. Impressive. Chen Chen gave him a thumbs up. Unlin saw a black rectangular object on the youth's back. He couldn't help but ask curiously, What are you carrying on your back? Chen Chen put down the object on his back and said calmly, Oh, I caught a heavenly god. Unlin. Chen Chen opened the rectangular object. Inside was a red-haired man with a crimson divine halo on his head. He was constantly struggling, but he was tightly bound by golden rope. This heavenly god is the heavenly fire god. It's a surprise that I planned to give you. Are you happy? The youth looked at Unlin and smiled faintly. Unlin looked at the struggling heavenly fire god, and his mouth opened wide in shock. I'm happy. He had never thought that someone would actually give him a heavenly god as a gift. Was it a surprise? What a surprise! He had just said that he could not force the heavenly fire god and should just let nature take its course. In the end, Chen Chen gave him a heavenly fire god. This naturally came too quickly. The heavenly fire god was fated to be with him. I won't hide it from you. I've been looking forward to this heavenly fire god for a long time. Unlin swallowed and spoke with a scorching gaze. I know. What surprised Unlin was that Chen Chen seemed to have predicted everything. The powers that you can absorb are related to the basic physical elements in this world. You should be able to absorb the 5 elements as well. That's why I've been eyeing the heavenly fire god for a long time. Chen Chen smiled. Unlin's eyes reddened. He was touched. Chen Chen, you're the best. Wah! The heavenly fire god struggled in despair. Its eyes were filled with rage and fear. It was sealed so tightly that it didn't even have the right to speak. Don't waste time. My attack must have alarmed the paramount heavenly gods. Hurry up and kill the heavenly fire god, Chen Chen urged. She was willing to risk being targeted by a paramount heavenly god in order to capture the heavenly fire god and hand it over to him. This kind of camaraderie was truly profound. All right. Unlin nodded. He unsheathed his evil-slaying sword without another word. Streaks of extremely sharp sword projections stabbed toward the heavenly fire god within the rectangular artifact. Rip, rip, rip. Blood spurted out. Each and every one of his sword strikes was imbued with his most powerful heaven-crushing true intent. Wah! The heavenly fire god wanted to cry out in pain, but he couldn't. Insert, pull out, insert, pull out, insert, pull out. Unlin stabbed the heavenly fire god over 10,000 times just like that. Bam! A crisp sound rang out. The heavenly fire god's divine halo exploded into countless specks of light. His expression of grievance, resentment, and pain was still on his face. However, in the next second, his body also transformed into a ball of flames. Then, he disappeared from this world. Unlin exhaled softly. His expression was still a little dazed. The heavenly fire god died just like that? He felt like he needed to apologize to the heavenly game god. The heavenly fire god was the heavenly god he had the easiest time killing. This time, not only did he not bleed or sweat, but he also didn't even use any buff spells. Then, the heavenly fire god died. That's right, in less than an hour, Unlin was slapped in the face by the heavenly fire god. He proved that there was no such thing as the easiest. Boom! The system in his consciousness trembled violently. A huge amount of true intent related to the Tao of Fire surged into his mind. The vast Tao of Fire seemed to want to engulf his entire consciousness. Congratulations, host! You have broken through to the 3rd stage of the Wings of True Fire. Congratulations, host! You have broken through to the 4th stage of the Wings of True Fire. Congratulations, host! You have broken through to the 5th stage of the Wings of True Fire. Congratulations, host! You have broken through to the 9th stage of the Wings of True Fire. You have obtained the power of fire. The system kept notifying him. At the same time, boundless true intent of the Tao of Fire surged into Enlin's body. Enlin instantly gained the most fundamental understanding of the fire element in this world. His eyes became extremely bright, as if they were even more dazzling than the sun in the sky. "Is it done?" Chen Chen asked. Enlin smiled. "It's done." Chapter 1835. Chen Chen heaved a sigh of relief. "It looks like my adventure was worth it." Enlin took 2 steps forward and hugged Chen Chen's frail body. "I don't know what to say. Thank you, brother." Chen Chen pushed Enlin away with an awkward expression. "You're welcome. Also, I don't really like hugs." Enlin laughed heartily and didn't seem to mind. He had perfected 3 of his 5 elemental cultivation methods, and was 1 step closer to the phenomenal success stage of his body of the war god. He had also obtained 1 more heavenly god power, which put him in a very good mood. Not only that, but he discovered that the 7 holy flames within his body had also become purer and denser after he perfected his wings of true fire cultivation method. Their power had increased to a whole new level. No, it was several levels higher. Under such circumstances, if he used his fire sage mode, he really didn't know how powerful he would become. The Eastern Heavenly Gate sent their heavenly gods to the Tai Chu continent to hunt down our powerful beings. This is a huge loss for them. They've already lost 2 more heavenly gods in such a short time. Enlin sighed with emotion. Chen Chen nodded in agreement. When the enemy is stronger than us, we can wait for them to make a mistake before pouncing on them. That way, we'll be able to turn the tables. However, we've also suffered many losses this time. Ever since the heavenly gods transformed into hunters, we've lost 3 Tao integration stage mighty figures and 31 return to void stage mighty figures. So many more people died? Enlin's expression shifted slightly. He remembered that when he left the 4-9 Immortal sect, only 2 Tao integration stage mighty figures and 23 return to void stage mighty figures had been killed. Who would have thought that so many powerful beings would be killed in just a few days? Chen Chen nodded. I was able to capture the heavenly fire god because he killed a Tao integration stage mighty figure and triggered heaven and earth grief. I just so happened to be within 500,000 kilometers of him, which was why I was able to capture him. Enlin's lips twitched. What the f***ck? That distance was enough to circle the earth over a dozen times. However, ordinary people couldn't understand the breadth of a mighty figure. Enlin quickly accepted Chen Chen's explanation. Beep beep beep. The voice transmission talisman in Chen Chen's sleeve suddenly beeped. He did not avoid Enlin and picked up the voice transmission talisman in front of him. Shuyan, what's the matter? A pleasant, ethereal, yet urgent voice came from the other side of the voice transmitting talisman. Not good. Chen Chen. Hurry and return to the heaven-crushing sex base. The heavenly light goddess and the heavenly earth god have suddenly launched an attack. Chen Chen, who had always been indifferent, couldn't help but put on a serious expression when he heard this. It was very clear that the other party had taken advantage of the fact that Chen Chen was busy dealing with the heavenly fire god to launch a sneak attack on the heaven-crushing sect. Furthermore, they had brought along 2 paramount heavenly gods. Rumble. The ground suddenly showed signs of trembling. It was not a vibration of the Earth's crust, but the movement of an entire plate. At the same time, there seemed to be a streak of white light piercing through the sky to the southeast of the holy glacial lands. It was clearly very far away, but they could still sense that extraordinary aura. I'm going back. Enlin, don't get involved. Right now, you can't get involved in a battle of this level, Chen Chen said before disappearing. Chen Chen, can I go eat some melons? Enlin yelled. However, Chen Chen's figure had already disappeared. It was clear that he had left in a hurry and did not have time to tell Enlin about this. Enlin looked toward the Purple Star Civilization ruins. That place was located in the northeast of the Kingdom of the Nine State. It occupied a very large area in the southeast of the holy glacial lands. The land there seemed to have been cursed. Not a single blade of grass grew, and it was a barren wasteland. In fact, there was even a faint purple glow that covered the surface of the ground. Living beings with weak constitutions would rot and die upon being exposed to the purple glow. Should I go or not? Unlin was a little tempted. He really wanted to see just how powerful the paramount heavenly gods of the Tai Chu continent were. Just a look from afar. It should be fine, right? Unlin really wanted to gauge his own strength and see the gap between him and the paramount heavenly god. After all, he felt like he was still slightly stronger than normal heavenly god. With this in mind, he also started to move toward the heaven-crushing sex space, the land of eternal light. Within the purple star civilization ruins, within a barren land of death. This area, which shone with a holy light, was currently under the most terrifying attack in its history. The Earth within a radius of 50,000 kilometers had turned into a white gold color and was extremely hot. Distorted geothermal energy surged through the Earth, as if it was trying to melt everything it came into contact with. At the same time, the Earth was quaking and cracking. Scorching lava tore through the Earth and shot into the sky like a geyser. Then, it transformed into a series of lava dragons that danced in the air and pounced toward the land of eternal light. Each of them was over 50 kilometers long and blotted out the sun. The power they exuded was as vast and boundless as that of a Tao integration stage true dragon. There were over 100 lava dragons of this level. They crashed into the spell formation of the land of eternal light again and again. Every time they crashed, it was as if a nuclear bomb had exploded, destroying and melting everything in its surroundings. The supreme beings cultivating the heaven-crushing techniques in the land of eternal light had never seen anything like this before. Their faces were all pale as they looked at this miraculous scene. It was no exaggeration to say that if it weren't for the protection of the land of eternal light, they wouldn't even be able to last a second against these lava dragons that contained the boundless power of the earth. This was the disparity between them, a disparity that not even the heaven-crushing techniques could make up for. Apart from the earth, a strange phenomenon also appeared in the sky. A boundless white light descended from the sky. This light was warmer and purer than the light of the sun. It was as if it could nurture all things and allow all living beings to accept it. Some of the weaker return to void stage supreme beings in the land of eternal light gradually became dazed as they stared at this light. Some of them even knelt to the ground. The supreme beings who were just cursing the heavenly gods and researching how to crush the heavens suddenly began to praise heaven and earth. They proclaimed that the heavens were the truth and that they wouldn't exist without the heavens. Even if they were to die for the heavens, they wouldn't have any regrets. The pure light fell upon the spell formation of the land of eternal light and permeated through it even more violently than the hundreds of lava dragons. The spell formation also began to tremble violently. The first heavenly disciple, Cyril, the fourth heavenly disciple, the ancient dragon empress, the two heavenly disciple attendants, the three heavenly disciple candidates, and a group of Tao integration stage super mighty beings stood at different locations within the spell formation. They were struggling to defend against the combined attacks of the two paramount heavenly god. What on earth is Chen Chen doing? Why isn't he back yet? Also, what did he do to anger the heavenly light goddess? Why is she attacking us in spite of the backlash from the heavenly Tao? As the core of the spell formation in the land of eternal light, Cyril was under unimaginable pressure. His eyes were as red as blood, and he turned to look at the pure and aloof young woman with fluttering white hair. Chen Chen's guard, Shuiyan, was a little hesitant. However, after a few seconds, she still answered truthfully, "Master, he captured a heavenly fire god and gifted it to Enlin. That's why Cyril." Chapter 1836. Cyril felt like there was something stuck in his chest, and he had to vent it out. In the next instant, he understood what Chen Chen was thinking. Sigh, it's all for Enlin's development again. You're about to become Enlin's grandfather. A resigned expression appeared on Cyril's face. Although he didn't object to Chen doing this, he should at least inform him beforehand so that he could be mentally prepared, right? Two paramount heavenly gods had suddenly come to raid his house, and that was quite a scary prospect. The ground of the land of eternal light had already turned into scorching lava, and the terrifying power of the earth crashed into the ground like a sledgehammer. Once the spell formation was broken, the power of the earth would instantly engulf and destroy everything in the land of eternal light. Not only were there attacks from the ground, but the attacks from the sky were even more terrifying. Pure light poured down like a waterfall, and its penetrative power was extremely powerful. It could assimilate and disintegrate everything it came into contact with. Not to mention, there were countless lava dragons crashing into the ground. Every part of the land of eternal light was being pressured and attacked. It had been completely surrounded. If this went on, as time passed, there would be a moment when everyone could no longer hold on. When that time came, the land of eternal light would be destroyed. Just as the situation was at a stalemate, another change occurred within the land of eternal light. Some of the weaker Return to Void stage mighty figures had already been infected by the pure light in the sky. For the heavens! Charge! For the true light! The Return to Void stage mighty figures suddenly roared as they pounced toward their companions, unleashing terrifying spell techniques. Their companions were caught off guard and were severely wounded by the spell technique. Jinja, Ghost King of Strength, calm down. A tree man with green vines surging all over its body waved its arms, releasing tough vines that bound Jinja and the Ghost King of Strength. However, a few seconds later, the tree man's eyes became glazed over again. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The vines released Jinja and the Ghost King of Strength before attacking those whose consciousnesses were not affected. Ha ha! Fight for the light, all of you can go to hell. Boom 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 boom. Energy exploded, and blood splattered through the air. The heaven-crushing stage mighty figures who had lost their consciousnesses and strong wills began to battle one another. The situation instantly became chaotic. There were even a few terrifying spell techniques hurtling toward the palace in the center of the land of eternal light. However, they were all blocked by an invisible barrier within the palace. A ray of blue light flew out from the heaven-breaking glazed palace. She was wearing a blue muslin dress, and her jade-like little feet were tied with golden bells. Her face was exquisite and flawless, but there was not a trace of expression on it, as if she was an emotionless doll. The most eye-catching part of her was her white hair, which was longer than her height. As it danced in the air, it reflected the holy light in the sky, like a small and brilliant galaxy. It's the second son of heaven's attendant. Lady Shui Yen has arrived. When the powerful beings of the heaven-crushing sect saw the newcomers, a scorching light appeared in their eyes. They had been attacked by their comrade who had lost his mind, and they had long been aggrieved, but they could not find a better way to deal with it. Shui Yen flew around the land of eternal light at an extremely fast speed. Her hands flung out numerous blue balls of light. All the berserk experts who were struck by the blue balls of light would be frozen on the spot without exception. In no time, she had frozen the 21 crazed heaven-crushing sect members. Those with weak willpower and cultivation bases, use your spell techniques to confine yourselves. Her cold and emotionless voice reverberated throughout the entire land of eternal light. Some powerful beings who felt that something was wrong with their consciousness quickly calmed down upon hearing this. They really did use their most powerful binding spell techniques to restrain themselves so that they would not harm their comrade. They all felt a wave of humiliation and indignation. When faced with the heavenly God in the sky, it was difficult for them to even restrain themselves from harming their comrade, let alone fight. This kind of disparity in power made them feel very uncomfortable. They were cultivating the heaven-sundering techniques. Yet, upon seeing the heavens, all they could do was surrender? That's right, they had used spell techniques to restrain themselves. Wasn't that the same as surrendering themselves to be captured? Humiliation, indignation, and fury transformed into a seed that was planted in the hearts of some of the powerful beings of the heaven-crushing sect. Perhaps some people would become dispirited and listless due to the terrifying disparity in power. However, there were also people who could erupt with an even more vigorous and unyielding battle intent. Rumble, right at this moment, an extremely small crack appeared in the land of eternal light. Shui Yan's expression changed slightly, and she immediately slapped her hand toward the crack. Black Emperor Mirror. A pitch-black mirror that was completely opaque and emanated the energy of a god-grade artifact repaired the crack. However, a wisp of faintly discernible white light had already penetrated through the crack. Then, as if it had a life of its own, it charged through the interior of the land of eternal light at a terrifying speed. Puff, puff, puff. One by one, the powerful beings of the heaven-crushing sect wailed in anguish as ghastly bloody holes appeared on their bodies. Even the weakest of them was a supreme being of the return to void stage. However, they were completely powerless against this wisp of white light that had sneaked in. In the blink of an eye, another dozen or so supreme beings of the return to void stage were either injured or killed. "Don't you dare wreak havoc in my territory!" Shuiyin roared. Her body rapidly leaped forward, and she used spatial skipping to accurately block the path of the white light. Then, she slapped her palm toward it. Bam! The white light tore through Shui Yan's fair palm and almost tore her arm into pieces. Shui Yan let out a muffled groan, and blue blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. However, she managed to extinguish the white light in the end. Kacha, another crisp sound rang out. Everyone hurriedly looked toward the spell formation. To their despair, they discovered that the spell formation had cracked open again. Furthermore, there was more than one crack this time. It's over. Everyone had this feeling in their hearts. Just a wisp of white light had caused them to be unable to defend against it. Now there were so many cracks, and the light was pouring down in torrents, illuminating everything. To them, this was definitely a disaster. Heavenly Light God. Right at this moment, a cold, indifferent, and enraged voice traveled over from afar. Once the voice reached them, the cracks instantly healed. A delicate and handsome youth dressed in hemp garments stepped through the void and flew over. When the heaven-crushing sect members saw the youth walking through the void, tears welled up in their eyes. It's heavenly disciple Chen Chen. This is great. Chen Chen is back. We have to hold on. In the hearts of the heaven-crushing sect members, Chen Chen's position was about the same as Cyril's. They were both founders of the heaven-crushing sect. Furthermore, Chen Chen was a human, and the majority of the heaven-crushing sect members were humans. Thus, they favored Chen Chen more. Chen Chen's expression darkened as he swept his gaze over all of the severely injured or dead sect members. When he saw that one of Shui Yan's arms was missing, his eyes trembled slightly. Heavenly Light, if you want to fight, come find me. Why do you have to make things difficult for a bunch of juniors? Chen Chen's body soared into the sky and crashed into the boundless light. The Heavenly Light God's ethereal voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth. You should also pay the price for attacking without permission. I am no longer the same me who feared the backlash of the heavenly Tao. Instantly, a rumbling explosion sounded from within the boundless light. Even though the heaven-crushing sect members were separated by the spell formation, their hearts still palpitated in fear from the terrifying collision of energy. They felt as if the sky was about to collapse. Boom! There was another deafening explosion. Countless black cracks appeared in the sky and spread out in all directions like a spider's web. These cracks extended to the farthest point, as if they were connected to the horizon. The heaven-crushing sect members widened their eyes in shock. The sky was really going to collapse? Chapter 1837. Cyril was at the core of the land of eternal light's spell formation, and he was a little astonished at the sight in the sky. Oi KK. Chen Chen, there's no need to be so dramatic. Are you really going to fight? Chen Chen had stalled the heavenly light goddess, and the pressure on Cyril's side was greatly reduced. At the same time, Cyril was wondering if he should also go underground and fight the heavenly earth god. In any case, the spell formation here was being maintained by the ancient Dragon Empress, Demon Emperor Siyu, and the other heavenly disciple candidates. Even if a normal heavenly god came, they wouldn't be able to break it. All the powerful beings of the heaven-crushing sect were battle-hungry, and Cyril was no exception. A bloodthirsty glint appeared in his crimson eyes, and his muscles began to bulge. Black bat wings appeared on his back as he licked his lip. Boom! The sound of a violent collision suddenly erupted from outside the spell formation. The killing intent in Cyril's eyes suddenly faded. He looked outside the spell formation barrier and saw that a bloody hole had appeared in Chen Chen's chest. Balls of light were exploding relentlessly within the bloody hole, releasing destructive power as if they were trying to annihilate Chen Chen's body. However, the explosions were restricted to a certain space, and they were unable to spread to his entire body. The cracked sky had already been repaired by the pure light and was as good as new. An exquisitely beautiful heavenly goddess whose entire body was constructed from particles of light appeared. She was over 1,000,000 feet tall, and there were 990,000 different phenomena behind her in a circular formation that seemed to encompass the entire heaven and earth. Just like that, she looked down at Chen Chen, who seemed even smaller than an ant, outside the protective wall of the formation. Her voice was indifferent, but it was filled with boundless heavenly might. Chen Chen, I indeed can't kill you now, but severely wounding you is not an issue. The irrecoverable light wound on your chest is my punishment for you. The next time we meet, I will completely wipe you off the face of this world. After saying this, the heavenly light goddess transformed into particles of light and disappeared. At the same time, the terrifying aura emanating from the earth also completely calmed down. At the same time, the incessant waves of geothermal energy also calmed down. The lava dragons in the sky also exploded and fell to the ground, transforming into a torrential rain of lava. Wallalalala, the scorching hot, red torrential rain marked the end of this sudden ambush. The powerful beings of the heaven-crushing sect all raised their heads to look at the red torrential rain. Each of them had a complicated feeling in their heart. This was the first time they had seen a paramount heavenly god in action. That terrifying power, that despair-inducing attack, made them feel a deep sense of powerlessness. Fortunately, their heavenly sons were strong enough. Although they weren't strong enough to defeat a paramount heavenly god, at the very least, the paramount heavenly gods couldn't kill them. Chen Chen. A trace of panic appeared on Shui Yan's cold face. She quickly flew towards the youth not far away and carefully supported him. She asked anxiously, "Are you all right?" Chen Chen smiled bitterly. "I might have to recuperate in seclusion for a while." Shui Yan looked at the light that was still continuously exploding in Chen Chen's chest. She tightly pursed her lips, and an expression of guilt appeared on her face. "I'm sorry, I couldn't help you." Numerous figures flew out from the heaven-shattering glazed palace and charged towards Chen Chen. They were all core pillars of the heaven-crushing sect, and every single one of them was at or above the Tao integration stage. Cyril, the ancient Dragon Empress, and Demon Emperor Siyu were also present. They all had worried expressions on their faces as they approached Chen Chen to understand his situation. Cyril carefully examined Chen Chen's injuries. Sigh. "Chen, you were still too impulsive." He sighed in exasperation. "If you force the heavenly light goddess to make a move, the heavenly light goddess will indeed suffer a backlash from the heavenly Tao. However, your current situation isn't any better. Look at you now. Apart from doing everything you can to suppress the power of light, what else can you do? This has already affected your chances of becoming a heaven." Chen Chen listened to Cyril's words. A gentle smile appeared on his face. "This is the choice I made after careful consideration." Shui Yan's heart ached a little. Do you think it's worth it to do this? Of course it's worth it. Even if I had to choose again, I would still make the same choice. I won't regret it, Chen Chen said with a confident expression. Shui Yin pursed her lips tightly. She was a little angry. All right, I'm going to recuperate. If there's anything else, we can talk about it later. Chen Chen didn't want to say anything else. He directly walked toward the heaven-crushing glazed palace. The others also couldn't do anything. In the heaven-crushing sect, even Cyril couldn't control Chen Chen, let alone the others. Even the ancient dragon empress could only watch from the sidelines. Why does Master treat Enlin so well? The ancient dragon empress crossed her arms, a hint of melancholy on her face. She had originally thought that Chen Chen only treated Enlin a little more specially and kindly. However, from the looks of it now, she had still underestimated Chen Chen's feelings for Enlin. An ethereal and cold voice traveled over. If Enlin betrayed Chen Chen, I'll make him pay the price even if I have to risk my life. Shui Yin humphed coldly. Then, she followed Chen Chen into the heaven-crushing glazed palace. The ancient dragon empress scratched her dragon horns in confusion. Are they talking about the same thing? At this moment, 15,000 kilometers away from the land of eternal light, Enlin strode across the scorching earth, and he extended his hand to catch the lava rain falling from the sky. The scorching rain, which was so hot that even space itself was warping, made a sizzling sound as it fell into his hand. Even though he had cultivated his body to the Tao integration pinnacle stage, he still felt waves of piercing pain. Not only is this power imbued with extremely high temperatures, but it also contains the terrifying power of the earth. Even if the heavenly gods were too lazy to deal with this lava rain, it would still be an extremely terrifying nightmare for Return to Void stage mighty figures. Enlin gazed at the sky full of lava rain. There was practically no end to this vast and boundless land. The sky and the earth were both connected by scorching lava. No matter where he fled to, he would be battered by the lava. Thankfully, this place was originally barren. Otherwise, all living beings would have been plunged into an abyss of misery. What did it mean to have such a large-scale lava rain? If it all fell on Earth, it would be able to melt the entire planet in an instant. I wonder how Chen Chen is doing. Enlin couldn't help but shudder as he thought back to the final moment he saw that indomitable woman. That was a power that had completely changed his perception of her. In particular, the 990,000 phenomena behind the woman. Each and every one of them was incomparably exquisite, as if they were all paths of Tao that had reached the pinnacle. He really didn't dare to imagine what it would be like if this power were to be unleashed to its fullest. The heavenly light goddess. I feel like she's even more badass than the heavenly earth god. With this in mind, Enlin started to worry about Chen Chen and the others again. He couldn't help but quicken his footstep. Soon, a piece of land that was piled up with some unknown, pure white rocks appeared before his eyes. A peculiar light that seemed to be imbued with the hope of advancing courageously enshrouded the entire space. In the center of the land stood an extremely majestic palace. Who's there? Enlin. It's Enlin. Hurry up and inform the heavenly disciple. Before Enlin could say anything, the heaven-crushing sect members all became excited. One of them hurriedly rushed forward to inform the heaven-crushing glazed palace, while the other hurriedly used his telekinesis to contact the heaven-crushing glazed palace. Chapter 1838. Soon, a woman in a rainbow-colored dragon robe flew over. Behind her was a young woman in a flowing blue dress. She looked like a snow fairy. Enlin, why are you here? Thank goodness you haven't been discovered by light and earth. The ancient dragon empress looked around nervously. They've already left. If they hadn't left, my divine sense would have sensed them. By the way, when you guys were fighting, I was still watching from afar. Enlin smiled. Smile, smile, smile. All you know how to do is smile. The young woman beside the ancient dragon empress glared at Enlin coldly. The frosty aura she exuded seemed to be able to freeze everything in its path. Air. And Lin blinked. It seemed like this young woman had a lot of resentment toward him. She's the second heavenly disciple's attendant, Shui Yan, the ancient dragon empress introduced. And Lin was even more confused. He didn't seem to have any interactions with Shui Yan. However, Shui Yan was looking at An Lin like a hen glaring at a hawk that had stolen its chick. Her expression was filled with wariness and dissatisfaction. Do you know that this battle broke out because of you? Shui Yan extended a snow-white finger and pointed at An Lin's nose. Chen Chen was severely injured because of you as well. Boom. An Lin felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Chen Chen was injured? How is he now? An Lin was extremely anxious. He immediately strode forward. I'll go and see him right now. It was also at this moment that a frosty aura surged in front of him. Immediately afterward, Shui Yan's petite and exquisite body spread open her arms and blocked An Lin's path. Her exquisitely sculpted face was covered in frost. Stop, she said coldly. Chen Chen is currently in seclusion due to his severe injuries. No one can see him. You can't disturb him. An Lin felt a bit guilty. Can't I even talk to him and check on his injuries? Although I don't want to admit it, if you stand in front of him and say this, he will definitely say yes. Shui Yan brought her exquisite face closer to An Lin, her eyes staring fixedly at him as she exhaled a cool and serene breath. But you know that it's not really possible. That's just his preference for you. If you really want what's best for him, then don't go. An Lin was dumbfounded. What was he talking about? What do you mean he knows? He didn't know. The ancient dragon empress felt a headache coming on as she looked at the two of them who were about to start a fight. All right, let's not talk about this for now. An Lin, you haven't been to the land of eternal light, right? How about I show you around? For the first time, the dragon emperor revealed a sweet and friendly smile. It couldn't be helped. If they didn't mediate, the two sides might start fighting for no reason. All right. An Lin also wanted to tour the land of eternal light. Oh, that's right. If you need my help with treating Chen Chen's injuries, feel free to tell me, An Lin said to Shui Yan. Shui Yan tilted her head to the side. Humph, no need. The ancient dragon empress smiled apologetically. Shui Yan is only a child. Please don't mind her. If there's anything I need your help with, I'll definitely tell you. An Lin nodded. Chen Chen was injured because of him. He still felt a bit guilty about this. I'll be leaving first. Sorry for the trouble, big sister Jinling. Shui Yan clearly couldn't be bothered to bring An Lin along. She flew lightly toward the heaven-crushing glazed palace. The ancient dragon empress felt a bit helpless upon seeing Shui Yan's expression. An Lin, I'm sorry. Shui Yan isn't usually like this. Perhaps Chen Chen's recent actions have made her jealous. Jealous? Jealous of who? An Lin was at a loss. The ancient dragon empress turned her crimson eyes toward An Lin. Who else could she be jealous of? You, of course. What? An Lin's mouth gaped open. He was shocked. Shui Yan likes Chen Chen. This is a secret among the higher-ups of the heaven-crushing sect. Your appearance has made her feel a sense of danger. Chen Chen treats you far too well. To be honest, even I'm a bit jealous, the ancient dragon empress said matter-of-factly. An Lin, Chen Chen and I. Our relationship is very pure, An Lin said with difficulty. Do you think that girls won't get jealous just because their relationship is pure? You're underestimating the jealousy of girls. The ancient dragon empress couldn't help but chuckle upon seeing An Lin's deflated expression. Little sister Shui Yan has never seen Chen Chen treat anyone better than he treats her. Apart from you. An Lin's lips twitched. What's going on? I have a rival in love? Tui. No, I've become Shui Yan's imaginary rival in love? This girl looks cold and aloof. It's hard to tell that she's actually quite passionate about Chen Chen. An Lin suddenly had a few more thoughts in his mind. Chen Chen was always expressionless, and Shui Yen was quite compatible with him. If he could set them up, he suddenly felt like this would be very fun. The ancient dragon empress led Lin through the land of eternal light. She wore a colorful dragon robe that accentuated her slender waist. Her chest was perky, and her figure was tall and impressive. Her long, slender, and fair calves were faintly discernible under the slit of her dragon robe. The dragon horns on her head were as exquisite and flawless as red jade. Coupled with her heroic and charming face, she gave off a sense of beauty and heroism at first glance. And Lin could sense that the ancient dragon empress aura had become more and more stable after experiencing one major event after another. She was no longer as intimidating as she had been when they first met. Instead, she was more like a valiant and heroic big sister. However, Lin knew that this wasn't because her edges had been smoothed out. Rather, it was because an unimaginably large volcano had been hidden within her body. Once it erupted, it would shake heaven and earth. This is the heaven-crushing sect's third echelon drill ground. The ancient dragon empress pointed at an area within the land of eternal light that had a circumference of 150 kilometers. It was enshrouded by a light barrier that resembled an eggshell. And Lin could see that there were many return-to-void stage mighty figures practicing their heaven-crushing techniques within the drill ground. At the top of the light barrier, there was a large heaven character that had been formed using water energy. Many return-to-void stage mighty figures were using their heaven-crushing techniques to attack the barrier. Most of the return-to-void stage mighty figures with average aptitudes are in the third echelon drill ground. Only those who can destroy the heaven shield will be able to advance to the second echelon, the ancient dragon empress explained. Impressive. I can already simulate the heaven-crushing techniques as soon as I've entered the sect. An expression of astonishment appeared on Lin's face. He could sense that there was actually a thin membrane that was extremely similar to the power of the heavens above the barrier. The ancient dragon empress extended a slender finger and pointed at the barrier. Only by destroying that barrier will one have the ability to harm Heaven Pioneer stage, heavenly human tribe powerful beings. And Lin nodded. Even the weakest official member of the heaven-crushing sect is at the return-to-void stage. There are around 80% of those who can destroy that barrier. The ancient dragon empress chuckled and said, all of the disciples that your 4-9 immortal sect sent to me for guidance were able to destroy that barrier. A smile appeared on Lin's face. Thankfully, I didn't disappoint teacher ancient dragon empress. A faint smile appeared on the ancient dragon empress face. The best part is yet to come. Now let me show you the pillars of the heaven-crushing sect. Chapter 1839. And Lin's interest was instantly piqued upon hearing this. They walked toward the eastern region of the land of eternal light. A barrier that looked like a 9-colored glazed wall enshrouded a huge space. And Lin could sense 9 different types of powers emanating from the barrier. The barrier was imbued with the power of the heavens. Furthermore, the powers of the heavens of the different elements stacked on top of one another to form an even more powerful and sturdy sky. There were only a few members who were undergoing internal training, and all of them were extremely powerful. Even Lin's expression changed slightly. There were 6 people in total. 1 was at the return-to-void intermediate stage, 4 were at the return-to-void final stage, and 1 was at the Tao integration stage. He also saw the top-rate celestial immortals of the celestial court, the mighty spirit god, and true Lord Wu-Da. These are the core forces of our heaven-crushing sect. All of them can pose a threat to Heaven Pioneer stage great generals. Most of them are already stationed in the Kingdom of the 9 States United Army, so there are very few people here. These people are either here to rest or to attempt to break through the heaven-crushing 9 heavens trial. They want to break through this glazed barrier and enter the first echelon of the heaven-crushing sect. The ancient dragon empress pointed at the powerful beings in front of them. Dabai, Sun Yuluo, Su Qianyun, Xianyuan Qing, and Yao Mingxi from your sect are probably members of the second echelon, the ancient dragon empress said. Anlin felt like he was going to give Dabai a good spanking when he got back. This B** starred isn't part of the first echelon? How embarrassing! The ancient dragon empress led Anlin to a place beside the heaven-crushing glazed palace. They entered a place that was covered in layers of restrictions. Anlin could actually sense the terrifying power of the nomological laws of the ruler of hell in that place. His vision blurred, and the space around him changed. Heaven and earth instantly changed. Anlin felt like he had arrived in a primordial world. What he saw was a barren, blood-red world with the skeletal remains of massive beasts. Terrifying energy currents wreaked havoc everywhere, and the space around him was extremely fragile. The sky was split into two layers. The bottom layer was white and the top layer was black. However, in the blink of an eye, the bottom layer was black and the top layer was white. Black and white rotated, growing and multiplying without end. The destruction of chaos and the creation of new matter. This is what it looked like when the world was first created. Anlin seemed to have sensed something. Have we arrived at the land of eternal lights, small world? A faint smile appeared on the ancient dragon empress' lips. To put it more accurately, we've arrived in a simulated small world. However, all of the properties of this simulated world are the same as the worlds created by normal gods of creation. In fact, it's even more resolute. Anlin caught sight of a holy martial clan living being in the distance, who was currently sitting with his legs crossed and eyes closed. The energy emanating from his body surged relentlessly, and it was so condensed that it appeared as if it had materialized. Then, it rippled through heaven and earth. Anlin was slightly astonished. Not only was his opponent at the Tao integration intermediate stage, but even the heaven-crushing true intent he was exuding was extremely pure. This is the heaven-crushing sect's first echelon. Your 4-9 immortal sects Xiaohong, Cassidy, Tobias, Shuizhantian, Little Huang, Xiao Zhe, and Xiao Tu are all powerful beings of this echelon. The 4 emperors of the celestial court of the Kingdom of the 9 States and the Tao integration stage, super mighty figures of the 4 great sects, are also members of this level. All those who have entered this echelon are the core members of the heaven-crushing sect. If they want to cultivate here, there's only one thing they have to do if they want to progress further. The ancient dragon empress pointed up at the black and white sky. Use the heaven-crushing technique to tear open the sky of this small world with your own power. You're not just going to tear open the sky. Instead, you're going to destroy the small world's heavenly Tao and replace it. Anlin looked up at the chaotic sky and couldn't help but draw a sharp intake of breath as he sensed the indestructible barrier. Gasp. That's a little exaggerated, the ancient dragon empress chuckled. Anlin, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for you to break it open? Just unleash your finger of the heavenly Tao once. As for the method to replace the heavenly Tao, Cyril and Chen can also teach you if you join the heaven-crushing sect. Oh, there's no need for that. Chen has already taught me that method in secret. Anlin shook his head. Ancient Dragon Empress. So just how many things has Chen been hiding from us? Even if he's giving us special treatment, there has to be a limit. The ancient Dragon Empress suddenly felt depressed again. Anlin was still sighing with emotion. Never would he have thought that the heaven-crushing sect would actually prepare a small world for its members to practice their heaven-crushing technique. This was really... What if someone really can break open this world and replace the heavenly Tao? Anlin asked curiously. The ancient Dragon Empress smiled. In that case, they would become heavenly disciple candidates of our heaven-crushing sect. In theory, they would be able to contend with the heavenly human tribes, heavenly gods, and heavenly god. Our heaven-crushing sect will use all available resources to nurture heavenly disciple candidates so that they have a chance to become true heavenly disciples. Currently, there are only 3 heavenly disciple candidates. The Western Buddhist kingdom's battling Buddha, the southern heavenly wing nation's holy angel Michael, and the dark night spirit realm's fairy queen Unmenjing. All of them are working hard to become the fifth heavenly disciple. And Lin couldn't help but sigh with emotion again. The heaven-crushing sect really is full of talented people. He knew what it meant to be able to destroy the heavenly Tao of a small world and rebuild it. This was definitely a power that was even more bad *SS than a Tao integration stage super mighty figure. The ancient dragon empress heaved a faint sigh. We originally had 4 heavenly disciple candidates. It's a pity that Xian Ting perished during the execution of the heavenly gods. That's right, the 4-9 immortal sect is full of talented people. An envious expression suddenly appeared on the ancient dragon empress' face. If your sects Bai Ling, Tina, and Su Xiaolan join the heaven-crushing sect, they will definitely become heavenly disciple candidates. Even in the heaven-crushing sect, they would be pillars of support. If things go smoothly, they might even become heavenly disciples. Don't even think about poaching them. They love me so much, so there's no way they would join your heaven-crushing sect. Lin mercilessly cut off the ancient dragon empress' delusions. The ancient dragon empress' eyes lit up. How about you join the heaven-crushing sect and become the 3rd heavenly disciple? Seeing as Chen Chen loves you so much, Lin almost threw up a mouthful of blood. Who would have thought that you'd become so mischievous? The ancient dragon empress still wore a warm and gentle smile on her face. All right, I'll take you to see Cyril. The two of them left the small world and walked into the heaven-crushing glazed palace. The entire palace was constructed from extremely special glazed materials, and it was extremely beautiful and spectacular. Not only was the energy density of this glazed material extremely high, but one could also see a completely different sky through the glazed area. Some skies were overcast with dark clouds, some skies were clear and boundless, some skies were filled with snow, and some skies were filled with a sea of blood. And Lin looked up at the ceiling and admired the different states of the sky with great interest. Some of the skies were extremely distorted and chaotic, presenting an extremely illogical appearance. However, his instincts told him that these types of skies really did exist. Mr. and Lin, we meet again. At this moment, a calm voice suddenly traveled over. Chapter 1840. And Lin raised his head to discover that Cyril was walking toward him with a smile on his face. He wore a red Taoist robe embroidered with the sun, moon, and stars. His features were handsome, and his huge bat wings were tucked behind his back. His eyes were red, but they were extremely gentle and calm, giving onlookers a sense of joy and comfort. This is the second time we've officially met since we parted ways on Earth. Cyril smiled. An apologetic expression appeared on Lin's face. I've caused trouble for them with the heavenly fire god incident. Mr. Lin, you're treating me like an outsider. We're a family, and your problems are our problems. There's no such thing as causing trouble or not, Cyril said with a serious expression. And Lin faltered upon hearing this. Did he hear wrongly? Advance and retreat together as a family? Come, let me introduce you. Cyril held onto Lin's hand enthusiastically as they walked toward the center of the heaven-crushing glazed palace. He pointed at a muscular true demon tribe male with a huge gourd on his back and said, "This is my heavenly disciple attendant, Demon Emperor Cu. I've heard so much about you, Demon Emperor Cu," Lin said respectfully. He was the former number 1 powerful being of the true demon tribe, and he was from the same era as the ancient fiend celestial. Ha ha ha, sect leader Lin, I've heard so much about you. Everyone says that the younger generation will surpass the older in time, but you've managed to rise to this level in such a short time. I'm truly amazed. Demon Emperor Cu chortled with glee, making him look like a heroic middle-aged man. This is our heavenly disciple candidate, Fairy Monarch Yun Menjing from the ancient Tai Chu realm's Dark Night Spirit Realm, Cyril continued. Greetings, esteemed sect leader Lin. You're a man with unparalleled luck. It's an honor to meet you. A female fairy with a sweet and clear voice stepped forward and bowed elegantly. Her skin was smooth, and her eyes shone with a bright white light. "Hello, fellow Taoist Yun Menjing. Do all of you speak so nicely?" And Lin felt very comfortable being praised. He extended his hand and shook the female elf's hand. Yun Menjing covered her mouth and chuckled lightly. Her two pointy ears perked up slightly as she raised her eyebrows. "The members of the heaven-crushing sect all have very pleasant tongues. Do you want to join us?" It had to be said that the heaven-crushing sect's heavenly disciple was truly fond of Lin. The ancient dragon empress had only just concluded her recruitment campaign, yet Yun Menjing was already extending invitations to him. "Haha, let's talk about it later," Lin hurriedly said perfunctorily. Yun Menjing let out a soft moan, her figure flashed, and she actually directly threw herself into Lin's embrace. For a moment, he was filled with warmth and fragrance. "Really? Do you want me to go down, or do you want me to go down?" Yun Menjing's lips parted slightly as she gently breathed out a moist fragrance towards Lin. Even if her skin was dark, under her exquisite, perfect, and extremely three-dimensional appearance, she exuded a different kind of charm. Lin was dumbstruck for a moment. What was going on now? Lin's breathing quickened significantly. Lin finally understood the meaning behind Yun Menjing's words. He hurriedly pushed the female elf in front of him away. "Wait, fellow Taoist Yun Menjing, I think you've misunderstood my words. What's wrong?" Yun Menjing's eyes were misty. Her slender and smooth legs moved slightly, and the dark black cicada wings behind her trembled incessantly. It looked like she wanted to continue pouncing towards him. "What I said just now was to talk about it later," Lin repeated seriously. Yun Menjing was slightly dazed upon hearing this. Then, a look of disappointment appeared on her face. An awkward yet polite smile appeared on Cyril's face. "Fellow Taoist and Lin, please don't take offense. The reason why Yun Menjing is like this is because she's been holding herself back for far too long." Lin's mouth gaped open in shock. She said something like this with a straight face, and he still wanted him to not take offense? However, Cyril continued, "She is the last survivor of the Dark Night Elf tribe. At the time, the ancient Tai Chu realm was ravaged, and all of the Dark Night Elf tribe were wiped out. She only survived because she was in an alternate realm outside of the ancient Tai Chu realm. As the last survivor of her tribe, her reproductive and mating instincts are extremely strong. She desperately wants to produce offspring with the bloodline of the Dark Night Elf tribe. The bloodlines of humans and elves are very similar, which is why Yun Menjing made this choice." "All right." Lin reluctantly accepted this setting. "However, there are so many humans out there, why must it be me?" Yun Menjing smiled upon hearing this. "I'm not that desperate to choose a random human. I, Yun Menjing, am a woman who is determined to ascend to the heavens. Those who can be chosen by me must at least be at the level of a heavenly disciple. Cyril is merciless, and Chen Chen is watching." She inched closer to Lin again, and her slender arms wrapped around Lin's waist. She raised her delicate and flawless face, and said in a seductive voice, "So, I only have you, I know. Su Xiaolan is your Dao partner. I can choose not to be your Dao partner." Yun Menjing's slender hands gently stroked Lin's back, and her slender waist twisted slightly. Her eyes were misty as she said, "I can be your lover. As long as you give me a baby, I'll do whatever you want to me." Lin felt as if his worldview had been completely refreshed. As long as she gave birth to a baby, she could become his lover? So when a tribe was forced to the point where there was only one of them left, they would become this crazy? He pushed Yun Menjing away again, and rejected her request with a righteous expression. Although this female elf had a very sexy figure, and her beauty was also top-notch, she was too black. No, even if she was white, there was nothing he could do about it. Lin was a loyal man. Yun Menjing was rejected for the second time, and she pouted with dissatisfaction. Who knows how many people there are in the heaven-crushing sect? I don't even care about them. Now, my request is already so low and you still reject me. Alright, Yun Menjing, I've given you a chance, but Enlin isn't willing. This matter ends here, Cyril said in an implacable voice. Yun Menjing could only reluctantly retreat. However, as she retreated, she insisted on asking for Enlin's voice transmission talisman, as if she were unwilling to give up. Cyril was very enthusiastic, and he brought Enlin to tour the core area of the heaven-crushing sect. There was an extremely small spell formation the size of a scallion pancake. Apparently, this was the key to crushing the heavens. Enlin could sense that this small spell formation was only a button, and it was only a catalyst to activate the larger spell formation. As for the larger spell formation, it had probably already fused with heaven and earth. It was formless, and ethereal. Once it was revealed, it would definitely trigger an unimaginably terrifying event. Crushing the heavens is a very artistic thing, especially when it is breaking through the supreme heavenly Tao of the entire universe. This is the greatest art in the world. Cyril stroked the small spell formation as he spoke with a smile. Our heaven-crushing sect is an open and tolerant sect. As long as you have enough aptitude and strength, you will be a heavenly son, and you will have the opportunity to become the true heavenly Tao. There is only one heavenly Tao. You have so many heavenly sons and heavenly son candidates. How are you going to divide them? Are you going to fight it out? Enlin chuckled. It's not as simple as fighting. There are many other things involved, and I'll explain them to you in the future. Cyril turned to look at Enlin with a serious expression, and said, If you join the heaven-crushing sect, you will have the highest chance of becoming the heavenly Tao. Chapter 1841. Enlin's heart jolted upon hearing this. However, he quickly came to his senses. You're trying to trick me into joining the sect again. Cyril spoke with a serious expression. I'm not lying to you. This is the final result that Chen Chen and I arrived at after extensive research. Enlin was still unconvinced. Don't you want to replace the heavenly Tao? If that's the case, why are you still trying to convince me to join the sect? The answer is obvious. If you don't join the heaven-crushing sect, I have a 7% chance of becoming the heavenly Tao, while Chen Chen has a 5% chance of becoming the heavenly Tao. Once you join the heaven-crushing sect, you have a 20% chance of becoming the heavenly Tao, while I have a 10% chance of becoming the heavenly Tao, while Chen Chen has a 7% chance of becoming the heavenly Tao. You are indeed the most likely to become the heavenly Tao, but what do you think I'll choose? Cyril smiled. Enlin was astonished again. Am I that useful? Can I even increase the success rate? Don't underestimate yourself. You are very important to us and to this world. Cyril spoke with a serious expression as he looked into Enlin's eyes. Oh right, don't join the heaven-mending sect. They're a bunch of cowards with no future, and they'll drag this world to its death sooner or later. Cyril didn't forget to mock his competitors. Enlin's lips twitched. Will joining the heaven-mending sect lower your chances of becoming the heavenly Tao? Cyril, you sure know how to draw inferences, Cyril said with a resigned expression. Clearly, he didn't deny Enlin's words. Enlin finally realized what kind of role he could play in this war. If Cyril wasn't lying, he was probably even more important than Cyril. However, he really didn't want to become the heavenly Tao. It didn't sound fun at all. All he wanted was world peace, to marry Xiaolan, and to live a carefree life as an immortal. By the way, how are Chen Chen's injuries? Enlin was still worried, and he asked again. He knew that Cyril was the one who understood Chen Chen's injuries the best. Don't worry, he won't die now, Cyril said in a relaxed tone. I'm asking how are his injuries? Enlin looked at Cyril. Cyril was silent for a long while before replying. It's not looking good. The heavenly light goddess placed an eternal and inextinguishable light seed in his chest. Chen Chen can only suppress this seed with all his might, but he can't get rid of it quickly. As for how long it will take for him to get rid of this seed, I can't say for sure. Lin's brows furrowed. Eternal and indestructible light seed. This should be a type of application of the power of the heavenly Tao. I'm quite proficient in the application of the powers of the heavenly Tao. Can you take me to see Chen Chen? Cyril sighed. If it's because you feel guilty. It's not because of guilt, Lin interrupted Cyril with a resolute expression. It's because I want to save Chen Chen. The ancient dragon empress expression shifted slightly. Cyril fell silent again. Heaven-breaking glazed palace, heaven-condensing secret realm. Chen Chen sat cross-legged in the center of the mystic realm. Everything in this mystic realm seemed to be at a standstill. The temperature here was infinitely close to absolute zero, and the flow of energy was also suppressed to its lowest point. But even so, the ball of light in his chest continued to erupt with terrifying explosions. The suppression of this ball of light by the entire mystic realm was extremely limited. Shuiyan, who was beside him, suddenly opened her azure eyes and stared at the three people walking toward her. Lin, why did you still come? The female was a little angry, but she still lowered her voice as much as possible. She didn't want to startle Chen Chen. Chen Chen had already entered the immaculate realm and isolated himself from the outside world. He was completely focused on dealing with the light seed in his body. This process was extremely important, so Shuiyan didn't even dare to speak loudly. Shuiyan, don't be rude. I brought Lin here to take a look, Cyril said. Shuiyan's voice was cold and resentful. What's the point of taking a look? Don't tell me he can get rid of the heavenly light goddess's power? Chen Chen can only do this himself. Even Master Cyril won't be able to help him. Lin didn't reply. Instead, he walked toward Chen Chen, who was sitting cross-legged. He looked at Chen Chen's pale face and the gigantic hole in his chest. He then recalled the warm and sunny smile on Chen Chen's face when he carried the heavenly fire god over, and his heart throbbed with pain. He carefully sensed the ball of light in front of Chen Chen's chest, and he sensed a power that he had never sensed before from the ball of light. The power of light was concentrated to the extreme, and it contained an explosive release of boundless energy. It could easily destroy a planet and disintegrate everything into light. However, it also gave off a feeling that this was a gift from the heavens. It was as if this was their final destination, their future, and their hope. Is this the power of the light god? Transforms everything into light, and light can evolve into all things. From then on, this cycle will never end, and it will conform to the natural order of the heavens. The eternal light seed is a power that can self-destruct. Its existence is eternal, it is matter, it is reality. Lin's eyes turned pure white, and he tried to analyze the power in front of him. However, his divine inspection technique couldn't find any flaws in the spell technique in front of him. The only feedback he received was that this spell technique was very powerful, and he couldn't break it at all. You've seen it, and you understand that you won't be able to help much with your current strength, right? Hurry up and leave. Don't disturb Chen Chen's recovery. Shuiyan's anger subsided slightly when she saw Lin's expression. However, she still tried to chase him away. Lin didn't move, and a determined expression appeared on his face. Just because I can't see any flaws doesn't mean that there aren't any. It's just that I'm not strong enough. Since that's the case, let's try this move. A formless ripple suddenly spread out in all directions and merged with heaven and earth. Countless silvery white veined patterns appeared in his eyes, and they formed a huge net that enveloped everything. The net spread out in all directions, and everything in the world appeared in his eyes. Tangible, intangible, real, fake, quiet, moving, this was a spell technique that he hadn't used in a very long time. It was the divine simulation technique that could analyze everything. Everything in the world became extremely clear in his eyes. Not only could he clearly see the movements of any particle, but he could also see how it had moved in the past, as well as how it would move in the future, Lin focused all of his attention on the ball of light in Chen Chen's chest. Instantly, he felt a piercing pain in his eyes. Tears of blood suddenly flowed from Lin's eyes, and he wailed in agony. What was even more painful was his consciousness. It was as if light was exploding within it. If it weren't for the fact that his consciousness had already been cultivated to the God of Creation stage, his consciousness would most likely have already ceased to exist. Lin. Cyril's expression changed drastically. Are you all right? The ancient dragon empress was also frightened, and she quickly approached Lin. Don't come over. I can hold on. Lin roared. He continued to activate his divine simulation technique, and his eyes, which were dripping tears of blood, stared fixedly at the ball of light in Chen Chen's chest. Seeing this, Shuiyan couldn't help but be moved. Why, the divine simulation technique could analyze all things in heaven and earth. It could connect cause and effect, as well as the past and present. Regardless of what power it was, it would reveal a flaw. Although the power of the light god was of a very high level, since Chen Chen was able to resist it, it definitely wasn't invincible or flawless. Lin firmly believed that he would be able to find a flaw. However, he didn't expect that the backlash from analyzing the power of light would be so terrifying. Even so, he didn't cower in the slightest. Instead, he used all of the power of his consciousness to resist this terrifying backlash. I'm just one step away. The eternally indestructible light seed has a special method of alternating reincarnation. As long as I can find a flaw in one of its links and destroy any link, I'll be able to break through its indestructibility. Tears of blood flowed from Lin's eyes as a god of creation stage power erupted from his body. Boom! The extremely dense power of his consciousness spread out in all directions. Regardless of whether it was Shuiyan, the ancient dragon empress, or Cyril, they were all stunned by the terrifying power of Lin's consciousness. They couldn't believe that this was the sole power of a return to void stage cultivator. Found it! Lin let out a low roar, and a crimson divine halo suddenly appeared above his head. At the same time, 4 Tao Jades of the heavenly gods also appeared. 5 bursts of power that contain the might of the supreme nomological laws suddenly burst forth, and they crazily pounced toward the light seed in Chen Chen's chest. Chen Chen, I'll definitely save you, and I'll do it right now. Chapter 1842. The ancient dragon empress expression changed drastically. Heavens! Lin, he can actually use 5 powers of the heavenly gods at the same time? Shuiyan was also momentarily rooted to the spot when she saw Lin's reckless actions. Lin was willing to go to such lengths for Chen Chen. What right did she have to stop Lin and Chen Chen? Rumble, another burst of power pounced toward Lin from the surrounding space. Crap! The heaven-crushing sex automatic defensive formation has been activated. Cyril's expression changed, and he immediately used his power to suppress the spell formation's attack. The heaven-crushing sex automatic defensive formation clearly treated Lin as a heavenly god. After all, that burst of power was far too similar to a heavenly god's. No, it was the power of a heavenly god. Lin had already found a flaw in the light seed. However, he still needed power to pry it open. The power of light was terrifyingly powerful. Normal powers didn't even have the right to touch it. However, Lin didn't panic in the slightest. This was because he possessed the powers of the heavenly gods. He and the heavenly light goddess both used powers of the heavenly gods. Although their levels were different, they were of the same element, so the repulsive force was much lower. It was still possible for him to pry open a small hole in the opponent's power. If one heavenly god wasn't enough, then he would use 2. If 2 heavenly gods weren't enough, then he would use 5. Within the ball of light that was eternally indestructible and exploding, there was the screeching of metal, the roaring of thunder, the trembling of mountains, the scorching of flames, and the howling of gales, The 5 bursts of powers of the heavenly gods crashed relentlessly into the areas that Unlin had identified as the flaws. Suddenly, a tiny black line appeared in the extremely pure eternal light, which contained countless hopes, after being attacked again and again. He actually succeeded? An expression of disbelief appeared on Cyril's face. Shuiyin was so excited that she couldn't speak. She stared fixedly at the scene unfolding before her, clenching her fists so tightly that her fingernails dug into her palms. Chen Chen had clearly immersed himself in the spotless realm. However, at this moment it was as if their hearts were connected. He actively coordinated with Enlin's power and launched an all-out attack on the light seed in his chest. Once the eternal state of light was broken, it would undergo an irreversible decay. The thin black line within the pure light grew larger and larger until it completely engulfed the light and disappeared. Without the light seed's attack, the bloody hole in Qin Chen's chest began to heal at a visible rate. Without the light seed's attack, the wound began to heal at a visible rate. Chen Chen, are you all right? Shui Yen excitedly went over to support him. I'm fine. Chen Chen shook his head before opening his eyes with great difficulty. Thank you, Enlin. I didn't think that you would be able to help me eliminate. When he saw the appearance of the man in front of him, his words were stuck in his throat and his pupils shrank. Enlin's eyes were bloodshot, and tears of blood were flowing from his eyes. His face was deathly pale, and even his aura had become like a candle flickering in the wind, as if it would be snuffed out at any moment. As long as you're all right, I'm glad. I've finally been of some use. You were far too worrisome. A smile appeared on Enlin's face. As he smiled, blood began to flow from his nostrils and ears. Chen Chen's mouth gaped open. I'm more worried about you now. Enlin wanted to say something, but his consciousness was swallowed by extreme exhaustion and dizziness. He sank into darkness. Enlin. Sect leader Enlin. Chen Chen rushed over and hugged Enlin. He didn't care about the blood that stained his simple hemp garment. His calm face was filled with worry, and his eyes reddened involuntarily. Enlin, why did you do this? I should have been able to repel this power on my own. Chen Chen hugged Enlin, who was bleeding from all 7 of his orifices. He desperately tried to stabilize Enlin's condition. Cyril sighed. In order to help Enlin obtain the power of fire, you were willing to offend the heavenly light goddess even at the cost of angering her. At first, I didn't quite understand why you did that, but now I feel like everything you did was worth it. Shui Yen pursed her lips tightly, and her heart was filled with shame as she recalled the way she had treated Enlin. Even her ice-cold cheeks felt a little hot from the shame. As for the ancient dragon empress, she didn't know what else to say. Enlin had refreshed her worldview time and time again. In particular, the light seed that even Cyril couldn't do anything about was dispelled by Enlin. It would be a lie to say that she didn't admire Enlin. The cultivator who hid in his turtle shell the first time he saw her had already grown to become even more powerful than her. The ancient dragon empress had initially thought that her growth was already very fast. However, compared to Enlin, she paled in comparison. Within a stretch of darkness, it was a blur. After an unknown amount of time, Enlin suddenly saw a stretch of pure light in the haziness. He had a feeling that his family, friends, sect disciples, and the world he lived in were all enveloped by this pure light. This light symbolized everything that existed, everything that was beautiful and hopeful, and everything that he desired to protect. He wanted to approach the light, but no matter what, he couldn't. He could only struggle in the endless darkness. He looked at the light in the distance like a stranded fish. Apart from struggling, he could only wait for death to descend upon him in pain. No. No, save me, let me pass. Enlin reached out to grab the light. However, he discovered that the darkness in front of him was a little rough and warm. The light grew brighter and brighter. Finally, Enlin opened his eyes. He discovered that one of his hands was grabbing onto Qin Chen's clothes, while the other hand was touching Qin Chen's chest. And Lin was dazed. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Shui Yan's expression darkened. On the other hand, Qin Chen's expression was natural. He smiled happily and said, "Lin, you're finally awake. Do you feel better?" And Lin immediately released his hands and checked the condition of his body. He discovered that the injuries he had suffered from the backlash had all healed. Moreover, he felt that his entire body was full of energy. It was as if he had fully recovered. I'm fine now," and Lin said excitedly. "Of course, Qin Chen fed you all of his precious elixirs," Shui Yan muttered softly. Qin Chen glanced at Shui Yan. Shui Yan immediately fell silent. However, after a moment she spoke again. "Lin. What's wrong?" Lin looked at the delicate and flawless young girl beside him. Shui Yan took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry. The words I said to you before were too much. I was wrong, it's all right. You did it for Qin Chen's own good." And Lin smiled magnanimously. Shui Yan's smile was like a lotus flower blooming on a snowy mountain. "And Lin, thank you." Chapter 1843. After resting for a while, Lin bade farewell to Qin Chen and the others and returned to the 4-9 Immortal sect. He had reaped great rewards this time. Not only had he killed the heavenly game god, but he had also absorbed the heavenly fire god's heavenly power into his own body, causing his strength to increase significantly. After the two paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly light goddess and the heavenly earth god had joined the fray. At the very least, they wouldn't send heavenly gods to hunt down the powerful beings of the Tai Chu continent anymore. Welcome back, Sect Leader Lin. Sect Leader Lin is unparalleled in this world and has emerged victorious in every battle. You are the Emperor of the Immortal Tao. Outside the gate of the 4-9 Immortal sect, another group of disciples stood in line to welcome their sect leader. Lin smiled and was just about to speak when a fragrant scent wafted over, and a soft body threw itself into his arms. "What did you do?" "I was so worried," Su Xiaolan complained in her sweet voice. "I went to seduce the heavenly gods. It's very easy to expose myself if I bring too many people with me," Lin explained as he patted her back. "Humph," Su Xiaolan pouted. "You still went to seduce the heavenly gods when you have me with you? Scumbag!" "Lin, Sect Leader Lin, did you reap any rewards from this trip?" Bai Ling stood at the very front of the welcoming line and asked curiously. "My rewards were not bad. I killed 2 heavenly gods, the heavenly game god and the heavenly fire god," Lin replied indifferently. Gasp! All the welcoming disciples stared at their sect leader in shock. He had just slain 2 heavenly gods, but he was able to make it sound so nonchalant, as if he had just slain 2 rabbits in the wilderness. As expected of their sect leader, many of the disciples' eyes were already glowing with scorching light. To them, Lin was like a mighty god, and feelings of admiration, reverence, and pride welled up in their hearts. "Looks like normal heavenly gods are no longer a threat to our beloved sect leader," Bai Ling said with a relaxed smile on her face. "It's all right. We still can't underestimate any heavenly deity," Lin said seriously. Lin returned to the sect to recuperate, eating, sleeping, and hitting Goldie. When he was bored, he would teach Yi Ling's sword technique. The days welcomed a short period of peace. Before he knew it, half a month had passed. An explosive sound could be heard from within Lin's sea of energy, along with an unwilling wail. The essence of the heaven beyond true immortals Dao Bone was completely digested and absorbed into his body. Congratulations to the host for completing the task. I will now impart the high-level war god's secret technique, Dark Immortal Transformation. Suddenly, a huge amount of information surged into his mind, threatening to burst his brain. An unimaginably vast Dao realm true meaning pulled him into a strange realm. On the boundless land, he saw the back of a figure standing proudly, ethereal and otherworldly, boundlessly imposing. He was clearly in the world, yet he seemed to have transcended it. With a light wave of his hand, the winds and clouds changed color and the earth split apart. With a single hand, he could grasp the sun, moon, and stars in the palm of his hand. This was a king who could rule over everything. Even heaven and earth were unable to trap him, and even heaven and earth were fearful of him. Is this, the heaven beyond, true immortal? Lin came to a realization, and his eyes lit up. The dark immortal transformation was actually a state of the heaven beyond true immortal. Lin could use this dark immortal transformation mystic technique to obtain a portion of the heaven beyond true immortal's power. The more powerful he was, the longer he could maintain the dark immortal transformation state, and the more complete the power he could unleash. This was an extremely terrifying buff spell technique. After obtaining the dark immortal transformation, Lin spent a few more days digesting it. Finally, on a bright and sunny morning, Lin found Bai Ling again. "Big sister Bai, I want to find a training ground." "Training ground? What level do you need?" Bai Ling was currently in the laboratory, and she adjusted her custom-made research glasses with curiosity in her bright eyes. Lin blinked. "I don't know what level I need either. The power I'm about to unleash might be very powerful and surpass my limit." "Surpass your limit?" Bai Ling's expression instantly became serious. "That's not going to be easy to find." She thought about it carefully, and her first thought was about her small phoenix world. However, she was very afraid that Lin would accidentally blow up the entire small phoenix world, and that would be a huge loss. "How about this? We'll designate the area between our grassland territory and the Purple Star Civilization ruins as your training ground. I'll then set up some restrictions and an energy absorption barrier for you. When you unleash your techniques, you'll unleash your techniques in the direction of the Purple Star Civilization ruins. How does that sound?" Bai Ling suggested. Lin thought about it for a moment. The Purple Star Civilization ruins were a dangerous place to begin with, so they wouldn't harm the innocent. Furthermore, Bai Ling had set up an energy absorption barrier along the way, which would be able to recycle the energy of his technique. This was a very good plan, and he nodded in agreement. The blue barrier of light was like a tunnel with no end in sight, traversing across the grassland of the realm of the fallen phoenix. This blue barrier of light is over 500 kilometers in length. Not only is its defensive prowess invincible, but it also possesses an extremely powerful energy absorption and conversion ability. Countless active particles can be converted into a powerful flow of energy under your control, which will flow to the sect to supply its daily energy expenses. A proud expression appeared on Bai Ling's face. "Feel free to cultivate within the barrier of light. This tunnel has been fused with the top-tier energy technology of the Purple Star and is in a liquid state. It will act like a sponge and absorb all of your energy layer by layer. It won't cause any destructive effects to the outside world," Bai Ling added confidently. Lin's heart immediately eased upon hearing this. "All right, then I'll try out my new spell technique, Dark Immortal Transformation." Boom! An inky black pillar of light soared into the sky, obscuring the sunlight. It was as if the dark energy was going to engulf all things. Bai Ling would never be able to forget the scene that appeared before her eyes. The blue barrier of light was instantly torn to shreds by the darkness. A black blade projection traversed across the entire land, extending from the realm of the fallen phoenix all the way to the Purple Star Civilization ruins. It was as if it was going to slice the entire land in half, creating a bottomless abyss. What kind of power is this?" Bai Ling's eyes widened. She discovered that she could no longer understand what was happening before her eyes. The darkness dissipated. Lin stood motionlessly on the spot, maintaining his sword-wielding posture. "Lin!" Bai Ling came to her senses and called out softly. Lin did not respond. Bai Ling was even more flustered. Could it be that this bastard had suffered from chi deviation? He's still ignoring me like this? If I approach him recklessly, Will he go berserk and slash me with his sword? The fearless Bai Ling was a little flustered after witnessing Enlin's performance. Thump! Enlin's stiff body fell forward. His body was still maintaining his sword-wielding posture, and he was as still as a statue. Enlin! Bai Ling finally made up her mind and rushed toward the collapsed Enlin. Chapter 1844. Bai Ling hugged the stiff Enlin and discovered that Enlin had never been so stiff before. Her soft body made contact with Enlin, and it was as if she was hugging a stone statue. Enlin, how are you feeling? Are you still alive? I can't speak, but can I communicate with my consciousness? Bai Ling asked with an urgent expression. Can you stop blabbering? I'm so tired, so tired. Let me recover. Enlin transmitted his voice through his divine sense, and it was extremely difficult for him to communicate with her. He was like a radio player that had run out of battery and was running out of juice. Oh, all right, leave it to me. A smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. Enlin, your technique is indeed terrifying, but the after effects are a little severe. Is it the 3-second true man technique? No, it should be the 1-second true man technique. You only lasted for a second just then. Bai Ling thought to herself for a moment before correcting herself. Enlin, big sister Bai, I think I can still be saved. Are you sure you want to keep blabbering with me until I die? Enlin was on the brink of tears. He could feel his life slipping away, but he was completely unable to move. Bai Ling carried Enlin over her shoulder and stepped forward. The space around them instantly warped. In the next instant they had already arrived at a massive laboratory. Thump! Bai Ling tossed Enlin into a vat of green nutrient fluid. Enlin instantly felt a large amount of energy flowing into his body, nourishing his entire body, including his consciousness. Bai Ling quickly twirled the inky black test pen in her hand as she adjusted her glasses. That technique of yours was extremely powerful, but it instantly depleted all of the energy in your body, as well as the energy in your sea of vital energy. Even the power of your consciousness was completely depleted. It could be said that you had to burn everything in your body in order to unleash that technique. Hence, when all of the energy in your body was depleted, the vitality of your cells was reduced to the extreme, and you successfully entered a state of suspended animation. It's all thanks to your powerful divine soul that you're still conscious. Enlin listened to Bai Ling's analysis, and he thought back to the first time he had used the origin energy of the netherworld. It had also been very easy for him to use it. However, what's interesting is that this secret technique that can instantly drain your energy doesn't have any side effect. It doesn't harm your body at all. This is very surprising to me. A hint of excitement appeared in Bai Ling's eyes as she spoke. Enlin was proud of himself. Of course, this was a high-level secret art. It was the highest-level secret art that the system had ever given him. Even the 6 strikes of the War God was only an intermediate-rank War God spell technique, so one could imagine just how powerful this secret technique was. So what if he was a real man for a second? Even if it was only for a second, he could conquer all the coquettish bitches in that second. This is... Bai Ling. What are you trying to do? Enlin screamed in fear using his inner sight. Nothing, I'm helping you heal. Bai Ling's breathing was a little ragged. Enlin's eyes widened. He could see that Bai Ling was extremely excited, as if she had obtained a treasure that was worth studying for a long time. She was completely unable to repress her desire to continue exploring it. Be a good boy and accept your treatment, Enlin. A pure and beautiful smile appeared on Bai Ling's face. Outside the 4-9 Immortal sect, Su Xiaolan wore a jade dress, and she stood at the beginning of the massive fissure in the ground as she surveyed the scene before her. This isn't as simple as just a crack. Enlin has carved out an abyss. Xianyuan Qing exclaimed with amazement on his face. Su Xiaolan's eyes turned pure golden, and true dragons swam within them. It was as if she could see the end of this fissure that extended to infinity. Unlin slashed from the land of the fallen phoenix to the ruins of the Purple Star civilization, Su Xiaolan said. Xian Yuan Qing. This attack range could no longer be described with words. It was as if it was going to reach the sky. By the way, how is Enlin now? Xian Yuan Qing asked again. Enlin is a little weak after using the mystic technique. Bai Ling said that she will be responsible for healing Enlin. Bai Ling is so responsible, even if she can't visit Enlin, I'm still very assured, Su Xiaolan said with a faint smile. 5 days later, Enlin walked out of Bai Ling's laboratory. He looked at the warm sunlight in the sky and felt that the past few days were like a dream. At first, he clearly refused and was very displeased. But in the end, he felt that the feeling was very comfortable and exciting. Human adaptability was truly terrifying. Enlin, you're welcome to come to my laboratory often, Bai Ling said with a smile. Enlin's body trembled and he fled in panic. In any case, he had mastered the Dark Immortal transformation and understood the characteristics of the Dark Immortal transformation, so this training session was not a waste. If he encountered an emergency, he could use it as a super trump card. Enlin, are you all right? Su Xiaolan walked through the air with a joyful smile on her face. I'm fine. Enlin nodded. A hint of shame welled up in his heart whenever he thought of what had happened in the past 5 days. Oh, right, Principal Wang is looking for you. He's at our sect's drill ground and has been waiting for you for 4 days, Su Xiaolan said. Principal Wang is looking for me? Enlin was a little surprised. He thought back to the principal who had been blowing bubbles, and he felt a little strange. Principal Wang is most likely looking for you because of his whale body, Su Xiaolan speculated. It's been over 100 years, and he still hasn't resolved his whale body? Isn't it just a divine pill? Enlin was astonished. Su Xiaolan massaged her brows. Do you think everyone earns money as easily as you do? Enlin was still in disbelief, and he flew toward the 4-9 Immortal Sect's Dao Plaza. On the vast Dao Plaza, there were many sect disciples gathered nearby to look at the whale. Some of them were pointing at it, while others were snickering. Many of them had graduated from the United University of Cultivation, so they were naturally familiar with this principle. However, they still couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of him. There was no other reason other than the fact that the principal was even weirder now. Even though Wang Xianyu was still in his Kuan Peng form, his body had shrunk drastically to the size of a small whale about 10 feet in size. His appearance was still the same as before, but his entire body was inky black. His 4 legs were slowly gliding through the air, and his eyes were especially large and energetic as he blew bubbles in a bored manner. As for why the disciples were finding this bizarre, it was entirely because Wang Xianyu's head had become extremely large at this moment. His originally streamlined whale body was now rapidly inflated to the shape of a huge watermelon, as if it had been inflated. It was an extremely comical sight to behold. Sigh. What a headache. Wang Xianyu sighed with emotion in his tender, childish voice. Chapter 1845. Wang Xianyu really had no other choice. There was no one in the entire celestial court that could help him. As Enlin's reputation skyrocketed, Wang Xianyu also learned that Enlin possessed unfathomable powers, so he decided to try his luck with Enlin. Sigh. I wonder if he'll be able to help me with this. Wang Xianyu knew that Enlin was very capable, but it would be extremely difficult to cure his illness, so he really didn't have much confidence. Sect leader is here. Sect leader Enlin. All of the disciples suddenly began to yell with excitement. Wang Xianyu looked up into the sky to find a man in a flowing white robe flying toward him. His eyes were bright and spirited, and his disposition was ethereal and otherworldly. The principal couldn't help but sigh with emotion. This student was becoming more and more like an immortal. Principal Wang, I'm really sorry for making you wait for so long. Enlin bowed respectfully toward Wang Xianyu. It's alright, I know you had something to do, so I didn't have to wait for long anyway. Wang Xinyu tried his best to put on a friendly smile. PFFF. And Lin couldn't help but burst into laughter. He was already trying his best to hold back his laughter when he saw Wang Xinyu's bloated head. Then, he heard Wang Xinyu's soft and tender voice, and it was as if he had been dealt a heavy blow. Wang Xinyu. Principal, you've changed quite a bit in the past 100 years. And Lin tried his best to hold back his laughter. Sigh. Student and Lin, it's a long story. Wang Xinyu swayed his fishtail with a dejected expression. Did you not have enough money to buy a divine pill? If I recall correctly, a divine pill can cure your illness, right? And Lin asked. However, Wang Xinyu immediately shook his head upon hearing An Lin's words. No, Mr. An Lin, how can a single divine pill solve my problem? There's no one in this world that can create the divine pill I need. What do you mean? An Lin blinked in confusion. Your illness has worsened? Has the difficulty of transforming from a fish into a human increased? Wang Xinyu shook his head. It wouldn't be difficult at all if I just wanted to transform a fish into a human. The problem is, I don't want to be a human anymore. An Lin. Don't you want to be human? Principal Wang. You. An Lin looked at the whale in front of him, and felt as if there was a fishbone stuck in his throat. What's so good about being a human? How can you be as free as a fish? Wang Xinyu wriggled his sexy body as he blew bubbles from his mouth. Only fish can swim in water, run on land, and fly in the sky. Furthermore, fish are so beautiful. They're so streamlined and beautiful. They're the most perfect form of life. The corners of An Lin's mouth twitched. He didn't know what to say. Mr. Principal, are you serious? An Lin looked at the short-legged whale in front of him. Of course it's real. You haven't become a Kuan, so you can't experience the wonders of becoming a Kuan. Being a fish is so much better than being a human. Wang Xinyu continued to dance with excitement. Alright, so, what do you want me to help you with? An Lin didn't feel like it had anything to do with him whether Wang Xinyu wanted to be a human or not, so he continued to ask. Wang Xinyu heaved a faint sigh before continuing in his tender voice. Sigh. To tell you the truth, I've encountered some difficulties in the process of transforming into a fish. Over 100 years ago, the Kuan Peng unleashed its core mystic technique, Kuan Peng transformation, on me to transform me into a Kuan. During this process, a special mark has been left in my body, which puts me at a natural disadvantage whenever I see the Kuan Peng. In fact, I might even become its slave. I just want to get rid of the mark, but it's already deeply embedded into my bloodline and completely fused with my fish body, so there's no way to get rid of it. A while ago, I tried to use brute force to get rid of the mark, but a side effect occurred. My bloodline went on a rampage, and I even messed up my head. Sigh, what a headache. 2 streams of tears were already flowing from Wang Xinyu's large, round eyes as he spoke. What? Mr. An Lin, please don't take offense. After becoming a fish, I don't have many other things, but I have a lot of water, and I like to cry. Well, Wang Xinyu continued to cry as he said, I'm asking for your help because I want you to see if there's any way to completely remove the mark left in my body by the Kuan Peng. Don't worry, I'm definitely not going to be an issue in terms of remuneration. I'm willing to use the 200 million spirit stones that I prepared to buy the divine pill as remuneration. An Lin's heart jolted. 200 million spirit stones was not a small sum. It was enough to buy a relatively good divine pill, and it was definitely a huge sum of money even for a Dao integration stage super mighty figure. Alright, I'll help you take a look. An Lin walked forward and placed his hand on Wang Xinyu's round head. His divine sense transformed into a burst of energy and began to probe into Wang Xinyu's bloodline. Using his extremely powerful divine sense, An Lin was indeed able to detect the issue with Wang Xinyu's bloodline, including the power of the mark. However, the Kuan-Ping mark had already completely fused into Wang Xianyu's bloodline, and it had become an inseparable part of his blood. It was impossible to remove it unless he decided to become a fish. As if he had guessed Enlin's thoughts, Wang Xianyu reiterated, "Classmate Enlin, I, Wang Xianyu, will only be a fish in this life." Enlin fell silent for a moment before pulling out his evil-slaying sword. "Little Xie, do you have a way to purify me?" After becoming a divine tool, the evil-slaying sword had gained 3 special skills, one of which was purification. This skill could cleanse all negative effects from its target. The power I can unleash is directly related to your power. If you were at the return to void initial stage before, I wouldn't be able to do anything. But now, I think I can give it a try, Little Xie's cold and tender voice sounded. Enlin's eyes lit up. Then, I'm counting on you, Little Xie. Principal Wang, I'm going to stab you with my sword. I hope you won't resist. Wait, classmate Enlin, why are you stabbing the principal with your sword? It's to treat your illness, of course. No. Why is stabbing me to treat my illness? There's no time to explain, eat my sword. 15 minutes later. Enlin returned to the sect leader palace with the 200 million spirit stones in his hand. Stabbing Principal Wang with his sword for 200 million spirit stones was a fantastic deal. Wang Xianyu looked at Enlin, who was happily returning to the sect leader palace with a huge sum of money, and he couldn't help but feel a little depressed. And Enlin had stabbed him with his sword, but he still had to give him 200 million spirit stones. Just thinking about it gave him a headache, even though he didn't have a headache. However, he quickly adjusted his state of mind. His watermelon head had disappeared, and he had reverted back to his original round and smooth appearance. He pulled out a mirror and looked at his handsome face. Those thick lips, round head, big eyes. How mesmerizing! A satisfied smile appeared on Wang Xianyu's face. I can cook fish again. Thank you, Enlin. I, Wang Xianyu, am leaving now, ha ha ha. Chapter 1846. Enlin felt like his wealth had increased again. He had obtained a large number of Void Spirit Tribe powerful beings' treasures during the Spirit Realm battle, and in addition to the treasures he already had, he had an unimaginably large sum of money. Treasures didn't count as money just sitting in his storage ring, but he had to use them. Thus, he sought out Emperor Ziwei and exchanged all of the weapons in his storage ring for immortal swords. He emptied out all of the immortal swords in the Celestial Court treasure vault. He then went to the 4 great sects and the 9 imperials for immortal swords. In the end, he emptied out all of the immortal swords in the entire kingdom of the 9 states, and he set his sights on the entire Tai Chu continent. Sect leader Enlin's plundering of immortal swords had alerted many of the higher-ups on the Tai Chu continent. All of the top-rate powers that were fighting against the heavenly human tribe all agreed to cooperate with Enlin in exchanging immortal swords for immortal swords. Even Lan Xiaoni, who was far away in the West Sea, offered 5 immortal swords to Enlin for free on behalf of the West Sea Alliance. Enlin naturally wasn't going to accept them for free, so he offered 5 immortal swords of similar value and extremely intricate designs. Lan Xiaoni had initially wanted to refuse, but she changed her mind in the instant that she saw the immortal swords that Enlin had gifted her. Those 5 immortal swords were simply too beautiful. She really liked this style of immortal swords. Big Boss Enlin really knows me. He must have carefully selected these swords for me. Xiaoni understands his sincerity. Lan Xiaoni murmured to herself with a blush on her face as she stared at the immortal tool in front of her. Half a month later, during a meeting of the 4-9 Immortal Sect higher-up, Enlin looked at the mountainous pile of immortal swords before him and chortled with glee. All immortal swords in this world belong to me. Before him, 360 immortal swords were exuding dazzling light. The sword intent and sword aura converged to form energy fluctuations that made the entire space warp and warp. Sun Yulua almost knelt down to Enlin at the sight of the immortal swords before him. Holy Mother of God, I've never seen so many immortal swords in my life. What a dazzling light! I'm blinded. My eyes are going to be blinded, woof! Dabai clasped his hands over his eyes and spoke with difficulty. Su Qianyun blinked her beautiful eyes and said with a puzzled expression, "Why would I be blind? This light is clearly not very dazzling." The clown covered his eyes and said, "Dabai is right, big brother, and is too dazzling." Even Su Xiaolan was shocked by the scene before her. Every celestial sword is worth millions or even tens of millions of spirit stones. So many celestial swords. Did you exchange all your wealth for celestial swords? That's not the case. I haven't even used up all of my random treasures yet, let alone spirit stones and pills, and the entire Tai Chu continent is running out of them. I'm quite frustrated. A resigned expression appeared on Enlin's face. Kiss. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. He hadn't even finished exchanging for miscellaneous items, and he had already emptied the entire Tai Chu continent of all immortal swords? Ah, I'm going blind, my eyes! Su Qianyun wailed with grief. Dabai. This was actually quite an exaggeration. After all, mighty figures also used immortal sword. Some sword cultivators wouldn't trade their own swords for Enlin's hammer, would they? Enlin had only traded immortal swords that had been lying around, but even so, this was still quite an astonishing feat, master. Why are you collecting so many celestial swords? Merlin asked. I have an idea. This is going to become my most powerful corium technique. Enlin's eyes flashed, and there was an eager expression on his face. Bai Ling tapped the holographic screen lightly. All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda. The sect leader's display of wealth is over. Enlin reluctantly put away all of the immortal swords before turning to look at the holographic projection at the center of the conference room. There was a boundless ocean there. There was a gargantuan inky black hole in the center of the ocean, as if it were a massive abyssal mouth that was going to engulf everything that approached it. All of the ocean currents that approached the inky black hole would flow like a whirlpool before falling into the hole. Above the ocean, there was a boundlessly mighty projection of a blue ball of light. Its head was in the sky, and its feet were standing on the ocean. Its facial features were blurry, but one could vaguely make out the outline of a human. This is an image transmitted from the West Sea Alliance. The place where the West Sea has taken place is where the former High Priestess of the Spirit Fish Clan and the Heavenly Turtle Tribe are buried. Bai Ling looked at Enlin meaningfully. Enlin thought back to when he had entered that tomb with Lan Xiaoni, and he fell into deep thought upon discovering that they had somehow ended up in another realm. A while ago, a heavenly liquid god appeared for the first time in the West Sea. The heavenly liquid god battled against Alliance leader Lan Xiaoni, and both of them were severely wounded. Now, a black hole has appeared in the depths of the West Sea. Could it be that another heavenly god has appeared? Merlin mused. I'm afraid it's not an ordinary heavenly god. Instead, it's one of the 6 paramount heavenly gods, the heavenly sea god. Enlin said, I saw it when I was undergoing a trial in the tomb of the West Sea. Everyone fell silent upon hearing this, and the atmosphere became very heavy. It was clear that they had also guessed this possibility. Thinking back, Enlin had lied to the Spirit Fish Clan and the Heavenly Turtle Tribe mighty figures by telling them that he was the Heavenly Lightning God and that he was going to revive the human race on behalf of the heavens. Many mighty figures had probably discovered that they had been deceived by Enlin. After all, not only was he the Heavenly Lightning God, he was also the Heavenly Wind God, Heavenly Mountain God, Heavenly Metal God, Heavenly Fire God. How could a mere Heavenly Lightning God explain all of this? However, it was too late for them to regret now. They had already killed so many Heavenly Human Tribe powerful beings, and the West Sea Alliance was already on the same boat as the human race. Regardless of whether Enlin was the Heavenly Lightning God or the King Heavenly Lightning God, all they could do was continue down this path until the very end. Currently, the West Sea Alliance has sent 5 groups of scouts to investigate the situation at the entrance of the ocean. However, none of the experts who went to investigate the inside of the cave returned. Bai Ling continued, furthermore, after entering the cave, all of their means of communication are blocked. It's quite clear that there's an extremely powerful force field there that's keeping everything at bay. Lin stretched lazily with a smile. So be it. I'm quite familiar with that area, so let me go and investigate. Sect leader Lin likes to take the lead in everything. I wonder if this habit of his is a good or bad thing. Long Aotian sighed with emotion. Lin likes to fight, but there's nothing we can do. He's become a lot more powerful recently, and he doesn't have any enemies to practice on, so he's trying to find them himself. Su Xiaolan rolled her eyes. Lin chuckled. Xiaolan knows me so well. Immediately afterward, everyone discussed the recent situation, the movements of the heavenly human tribe, and the development of the sect before concluding the conference. Lin made his way out of the sect with Su Xiaolan by his side. Are you really in such a hurry? Do you need me to help you? This trip is going to be very dangerous, right? Su Xiaolan suddenly turned toward the man beside her. We don't have much time. Lin heaved a faint sigh. You stay behind at the 4-9 Immortal Sect to deal with any emergencies that arise. I can handle the situation on my own. The Heavenly Sea God might not have broken out of his seal yet, so this is my best opportunity, and I can't miss it. Whoosh! A spatial rift appeared, and Lin stepped into the spatial rift and disappeared from this world. Chapter 1847. At the westernmost region of the West Sea. This was a world where the sky and the sea had been flipped upside down. An endless ocean appeared in the sky, surging with waves. What had once been an ocean had been transformed into a clear, mirror-like sky. This was the westernmost region of the Tai Chu continent. Sky Realm. A gate over 100,000 feet tall stood in the Sky Realm. The gate pierced through the sky and the ocean, appearing extremely majestic and spectacular. 3 beings with divine halos above their heads were currently looking at a mirror. Within the mirror was a continent that had been lifted up by a massive pillar of water. This was the West Sea Alliance's base. This was the ability of Realm Heavenly God. They could turn the sky into a mirror and reflect everything in the world. They knew everything that happened in the world like the back of their hand. We have to retrieve the Heavenly Sea God's heavenly water power before he returns, a silvery gray Heavenly God said in an indifferent voice. Heavenly Liquid God, we have to act now in case something unexpected happens. I heard that a battle just took place at the Eastern Heavenly Gate, and they lost 2 more Heavenly Gods. This is related to Chen Chen and Lin. A Heavenly God with a mirror-like body and a mirror-like body spoke in a shrill voice. This was the vastly renowned Heavenly Mirror God under the Heavenly Sea God's command. F***CK. Lin and Chin Chin are sh**T stirrers. The Heavenly Liquid God roared. A fatso composed of all types of gases sucked on his finger with a dumb smile. If Lin and Chin Chin are sh**T stirers, then what are we? Deathly silence ensued. Boom. The fatso's head was suddenly slammed into the sky realm by the Heavenly Liquid God. If you don't know how to talk, then stay put, the Heavenly Liquid God flared up with rage. Wah! Wah! The fatso struggled, and a burst of energy suddenly erupted from his stomach. Clouds, mist, frost, and snow imbued with terrifying power exploded in an instant, blasting the Heavenly Liquid God's hand away and sending the Heavenly Liquid God flying for over 5,000 kilometers. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The wind and snow continued to attack violently. The Heavenly Mirror God held a large mirror in its hand and looked at the deranged fatso with a speechless expression. Heavenly Liquid God, why are you doing this? What's the point of bickering with an idiot? The Heavenly Liquid God flew back in a slightly disheveled manner. After retrieving the Heavenly Water God, We'll just toss the heavenly weather god into the West Sea Alliance headquarters and let that idiot wreak havoc in the West Sea Alliance. Is there really no way to save the heavenly water god? The heavenly mirror god was still a little hesitant. Redeem my ass. Lan Xiaoni didn't know what kind of magic potion the human race had fed her, but her heart was completely on the human race's side. When I went to see her, she attacked me without any hesitation. She doesn't look like a comrade at all. The heavenly liquid god was enraged at the mention of this. It had initially planned to meet Lan Xiaoni in private to concoct a plan to conquer the human race, but she had almost killed it with a black tiger heart gouging technique. The heavenly liquid god was enraged just thinking about this. I even used the seal of the ocean that the heavenly sea god gave me. It can forcibly summon the heavenly gods to obey its commands. However, Lan Xiaoni was able to break free from the seal of the ocean's control through her powerful will. The heavenly liquid god grumbled. The heavenly mirror god heaved a forlorn sigh. Master heavenly sea god, you've made the wrong move. Even though you can reduce the heavenly Tao's power of suppression by allowing the heavenly gods to fuse with the living beings of this world, you won't be able to control her. What's the point of that? The heavenly liquid god harumphed coldly as it held a bright blue nail that was covered in divine patterns. Let's go retrieve the heavenly god of water and take everything from that mermaid. We'll make her understand that without the heavenly god of water, she's nothing more than a salted fish. At the West Sea Alliance base, at the immortal land above water, all of a sudden dark clouds enshrouded the sky. The dense, dark clouds obscured the sun, and it was as if they were about to crush down upon the immortal land above water. Lightning surged and roared in the sky above. The sea began to freeze, spreading from a distance all the way to the immortal land above water. In the end, even the gushing water pillars were frozen into icicles. An emergency siren sounded throughout the entire West Sea Alliance. The West Sea Alliance was the core force fighting against the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army on the Western Front, and this siren was a sign that the West Sea Alliance was on the brink of destruction. Within the immortal land above water, countless sea monster powerful beings stared at the three balls of light in the distance with expressions of shock and horror on their faces. Each and every ball of light exuded an indescribably terrifying might, as if they were facing the paramount gods of heaven and earth. All they could do was submit to them. Heavenly Sea Formation, activate! Lan Xingyang roared with rage in his sea blue battle robe. A massive blue formation emerged from the immortal land above water and extended for over 500 kilometers. The 5 Tao integration stage super mighty figures of the West Sea Alliance stood at 5 different locations on the immortal land above water. They unleashed their power of the divine Tao, which converged at the center of the formation to summon a massive figure. This was a female god with the body of a human and the tail of a fish. She held a golden divine trident in her hand and had a green turtle shell on her back. This was the most powerful war spirit of the West Sea Alliance, Imo Yi. War goddess Imo Yi raised her divine trident high into the air as she spoke in a holy voice, "Holy Sea, I am." Boom, boom, boom. Countless pillars of water suddenly burst forth from the frozen ocean before soaring into the sky. Ha ha! Trash, trash, trash. You're all just for show. The heavenly liquid god swatted a palm toward Imo Yi. A black liquid imbued with unimaginable power shot forth, violently tearing through the blue formation before crashing into Imo Yi's chest. Bam! A massive hole was blasted into Imo Yi's chest, and her body swayed violently. I'll finish you off with this attack. A sinister smile appeared on the heavenly liquid god's face as it spread open its hands. Black balls of liquid appeared in each of its palms, and it was just about to hurl them toward Imo Yi. Heavenly liquid god! Your opponent is here! A clear roar suddenly erupted from the sky. The ocean suddenly began to churn and tear through the frozen ocean. A streak of blue light descended like a divine sword and crashed toward the heavenly liquid god's body. Origin Water Divine Sword. Lan Xiaoni descended from the sky with her long, black hair dancing wildly in the wind. The blue seashell covered her voluptuous chest, revealing her fair and supple skin. Her slender waist swayed with the flexibility of her fishtail. She held an aqua-blue longsword in her hand. Her aura was fierce and sharp, and she looked like a war goddess with a monstrous battle intent. There was also a blue divine halo above her head, which was exuding a paramount divine light. A supreme and powerful force was attached to the longsword, causing the aquamarine longsword to contain an endless, vast power that could absorb all rivers into the sea. The heavenly liquid god immediately swatted its hands toward Lan Xiaoni, upon which a black liquid gushed forth. Break! Lan Xiaoni slashed her sword down with an unstoppable force. Rip! The blue longsword tore through the black liquid before slashing into the heavenly liquid god's chest at an extremely fast speed, upon which a bloody gash was inflicted. Damn it! The heavenly liquid god hurtled back in retreat. After fusing with the power of the heavenly gods, Lan Xiaoni suffered very little suppression from the heavenly Tao. The purity and might of the power of the heavenly gods that Lan Xiaoni could unleash was even more ridiculous than the heavenly gods. One had to realize that Lan Xiaoni was only a Tao integration initial stage living being. If she reached the Tao integration pinnacle stage, just how terrifying would her power of the heavenly gods be?